No, we don't want to do that. That would be silly.
Right. That would be ludicrous. Why would we want to do that? So now if I go to studio mode, I should be able to see what is going to go live here in a second. Let's see how it's going to. Okay, it says we're streaming. Our streaming health is online. It says it's good. Well, right now it says it's offline, but it says starting the stream. Stream is live. I don't see us yet. Here we come. We should be coming in, and there we are.
Yep.
So we are here. Welcome, everyone. People will be showing up in a second. And we'll wait a couple of seconds to get people in here, but we want to welcome everybody who's maybe watching this in the archive anytime after July 8th, 2017 to That Plugin Show, our second episode of That Plugin Show. I'm one of your co-hosts, David Vignola with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and my good friend and buddy over in Scotland, Johnny Scotland, LipshamStudios.uk is here as well. Say hello to the fine people, Johnny.
Hey guys, how are we doing? I hope everybody's doing well. Looks like 6 people are in.
Oh, cool! Very cool. So we're missing the third leg of our stool this time around. Our other good friend and co-host Johnny Geib is out on assignment today, and he is literally out on assignment. He is out in Texas working with a client setting up a home studio. So he is really doing home studio work. He's not sitting around with nothing to do like Johnny and I and doing plugin demos. So Johnny is on the road. He says he's sorry he can't be here, but he's going to watch us a little later. So hopefully he has a safe trip to Texas and back from Texas to Chicago. And Johnny will be here next month for our third episode of That Plugin Show. So welcome everyone once again. If you're checking this out in the archive, there's going to be some other past episodes of That Plugin Show. You can go on to my YouTube channel, Home Recording Made Easy, search the playlist That Plugin Show, and you will see all of the prior episodes. So this will be a lot of fun. And also stay tuned for next Saturday, which is, I believe, July 15th, right, Johnny, where we're doing our next, our monthly interactive mixing session, which will be really cool. Right?
Those are epic fun, the interactive mixing shows. I love doing those.
Yeah, interactive mixing. If you don't know what that is, it's where Johnny and I kind of get on here. We do a live broadcast. We bring up a song in Studio One that's not been mixed, just raw audio. Johnny and I kind of decide what plugins we're going to allow the chat room to kind of choose from as we process the track. We usually limit them, right, to a specific number so we don't have unlimited amount of plugins. And then the chat room makes all the mixing decisions. They make all of the editing decisions. They really just kind of tell Johnny and I what to do. Johnny tracks the decision making in the chat room. I work the Studio One and move all the faders and add all the plugins. We mix the song as a group, and then we mix it out and put it up on the Facebook page for everybody to hear. We have done 3, I think, right, Johnny, up to this point? And
yeah,
and they all have gone really well. And they're a lot of fun. So join us next week on July 15, 2017 for another episode of Interactive Mixing. That'll be really cool. So if you can let us know in the chat how our audio is, how is my audio compared to Johnny's audio? Johnny, why don't you say hello?
Yeah, hey folks, how are we doing? It's been a glorious day here in Edinburgh. It's been mildly warm, so they tell me on the weather forecast. Just a hair under 20 degrees C. So it's been nice. It's t-shirt weather for Scotland.
Yeah, really. So let me just check my chat room here. And I'm running the chat room on a laptop this time around instead of my other screen. So I have our OBS software up on one screen, Johnny on another screen, and then so I'm working 3 screens here at once. So kind of bear with me. Hopefully everything is going well. So Johnny, I don't know. Do you want to jump first, or do you want me to jump first this time around for that plugin show and show it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, yeah, you go first, Dave.
I'm going to go first? Okay, cool. All right, so let me bring up my session of Studio One and then let Johnny just kind of monitor and make sure we can actually see it and everybody can see it. I'm going to switch cameras so I can have Studio One being full screen. You certainly don't need to see me on half of the screen for that. Let me just transition over here. Okay, so now what should happen is you should see Johnny in a quick second. Studio One with me down in the bottom right-hand corner. And let me know and everyone in the chat know if you can see that.
Yeah, looks good, David.
Looks good. Okay. Oh, and by the way, everyone that's watching, you should be watching this if you can in 1080p on your whatever device you're watching this on. That'll give you the best resolution. Anything lower than 1080p, sometimes the plugins and the DAW can get a little fuzzy, especially depending on your internet connection. So we're running it at the highest resolution possible to give you the greatest experience that we can. Okay, so this week what I have, and again, I'm using a session that has not been mixed in any way, shape, or form. I tend to like to do these plugin demos with completely raw audio tracks because I feel you can hear the most audible difference as opposed to having a finished track, at least in this case. So this time I want to show Johnny, I want to show a plugin that I'm using on a couple of different tracks here. We're going to start it on our kick drum. This is I kind of categorize this as kind of a utility, kind of a plugin, something that I think everybody should have. It is super affordable, and I think you can even get it for free, and I'll tell you how. This is by a company called P&M, or Plug and Mix. Plug and Mix. And the name of this particular plugin is the Clary Sonics, and you should see that coming up on your screen here in a second. This is kind of my secret weapon, is kind of what I call the instant kick drum sound. Short of putting a sample replacement on your kick drum, if you're looking for a quick and easy way to get a really good kick drum sound, and it also works really well on bass, and I'll demonstrate that as well, this is the plugin to have. So if you go out to the Plugin Mix website, you can download this. I believe the cost is $49 US dollars. Now, the way they used to have a kind of a special, and this is how I got this plugin, if you go to their Facebook page, and you follow them and like them on their Facebook page, I think there's a place where, Johnny, you could put in your email address and they will send you a coupon code to download one free plugin. They make a whole host of plugins. They make a bundle package, I think, called the VIP package, and this is one of, I think, 50 plugins. I have most of them. Honestly, most of them I'm not crazy about. There's about 3 of them I really like, and this is one of them. So I was able to get this plugin for free. However, if that deal no longer exists, for 49 bucks, you really can't beat it. So let me show you how this plugin is kind of laid out, the Clary Sonic. So up here in the top left-hand corner, we have an input gain, okay? We have an input meter here, which you'll see in a second. On the bottom left-hand corner, we have this dial, or this knob, called low focus. And again, I'll walk you through and tell you what all that means. In the center, this big knob here is called the sub-level, okay? And then on the bottom right, we have this thing called clarity. In the bottom center of the plugin, we have this sub-level kind of a mode, sub 1, sub 2, sub 3, and I'll demo that for you. It just kind of gives you 3 kind of little tonal characteristics of this low sub-frequencies. On the right-hand side of the plugin, we have the output meter, and then we also have an output trim that we can dial back so we can kind of level match the input and the output. And it's a real simple plugin to use. They have some nice presets where you can come to the factory presets. I use this on kick drum a lot, and you could just choose one of the kick drum presets, and it works great. So what I have here is I have just a soloed up kick drum. I'll bypass it first so you can hear what the original kick drum sounds like. And you guys let me know, and Johnny, let me know how the audio sounds out there, whether it needs to be turned up or not, because we're just listening to the kick drum, obviously. I'll turn it up a little bit. And make sure we're not clipping. Okay, so this is prior to the plugin. Plugin's bypassed. Okay, so it's a live kick drum with some bleed, right? Kind of sounds kind of blah. So if we turn on this, just picking the bass drum 1 preset, and we kick it into play here. Okay. So we instantly go from kind of a thin, kind of a hollow, cardboardy type of a vibe to an actual kick drum that actually sounds like it's been. This is kind of it's really an EQ. Is really what it is. A real low frequency kind of an EQ. So let me demonstrate what the dials do. So if we start over here with the low focus, all the way off, and I'll turn down the sub level too, and the clarity. So here's the low focus. Okay, here's what the sub-level does. Okay, and here's the clarity.
Good grief, that's mental.
It gives you kind of the click. Okay, so if you kind of balance them out, The sub is really where I think the magic is in this. Okay, so we have our input here and then we have our output. And when we're doing the boosting, I turn down the output to kind of level match the plugin, because when you're boosting all that low end, you can start clipping pretty easily. So I try to just kind of level match it as best I can. Okay, so we cycle through some of the sub mode levels. Now you got to be listening to this on a good set of studio monitors or on good cans. If you're listening to this on a smartphone or earbuds, especially with a kick drum, maybe a little difficult to hear these subtle differences. But let me click over to sub mode number 1. It's number 2. Number 3. So really what the sub mode is doing is it's changing the frequency of where it's bumping that real low end. And I don't know what the exact values are. I don't see that anywhere in their literature. But I don't try to get too crazy with it. I just kind of turn the knobs till it sounds good, right? So I kind of tend to like sub 1. This is a great way to get that real low, thick end of the kick drum to come in, where sometimes you may have a problem getting that real low, beefy bottom end. This will do it for you. Now we'll bypass it. So that's what we started with. And there we go. No need to break out an EQ or anything. Just kind of turn 3 knobs. You get instant kick drum. I use this 70% of the time with mixes with acoustic, kick drums. Typically, instead of going through the whole hassle of breaking out an EQ and carving out all the bad frequencies and finding all the good, just throw this on there. And it just instantly sounds good. If this doesn't make your kick drum sound good, then I would replace it with a sample, because then the kick drum is so far gone that this is not going to help you. But this will really help you, give you that thickness. But you can also use it on bass guitar, which isn't, and also snare too. Let's take a look at snare. It actually does a pretty good job on snare. It's not my first choice, but just to show you, I'll keep the kick in play so we can hear it. Here's the snare. Oop, I want to get rid of that vocal here. Hold on. Let's see. We want to solo up that and solo up that. So here we are on the snare. Again, I just picked the preset, snare drum 3. If I bypass it, kind of cleans it up a little bit. You know, easy way to get something that just sounds decent. The clarity is what really helps the snare. Okay, that's the clarity all the way down. All the way up. Before, kind of hollow sounding, a little bit more polished. Now, what else? You can also use this. I've used this before, where you can use this as kind of what I call maybe like a way to kind of maybe a primer for EQ, where you just get the track sounding good. You could follow this up after the fact with another EQ if you want to shape it a little bit more, just to kind of give you a good starting point. You could toss this thing on there, kind of do what I just did, get something that sounds decent, that doesn't need a lot of EQ after that, and then you could go ahead, excuse me, and you can EQ after the fact if you want to do a little bit more tonal shaping. I also would typically put this on after the compressor. I would normally compress first. None of these tracks have been compressed. Maybe compress, even out that performance, throw the Clarisonic on there, and then as I'm moving through the mix, if I feel like as I'm bringing other instrumentation in, I need to go back and tweak that a little bit, I may toss on an EQ after that and maybe just dial, just kind of sweeten it up a little bit. But that kind of gives you, something that's a good starting point. Really easy to use. It's quick. It's cheap. It sounds good every time. We can also try it on bass. So if I keep the kick and snare, I don't know how the audio's out there, Johnny. Hopefully it's okay.
Yeah, sounding good.
The levels, you know?
Yeah, sounding really good.
Okay, so here's Clarisonic on the bass. Again, just picking a preset. I'll bypass it here in a second. That's a little more subtle on the bass. You can hear the bottom end, and look where the sub level is, way down. So if I want a little more roundness, man, that's a little much, but before. After. And if you want the fingers to come out, you can use the clarity knob. Put it in the mix a little bit more. So now we're just listening to kick, snare, bass, right? So if I want, I can go ahead and I can just bypass all three of those at the same time. So you can hear the cumulative effect here. So, I mean, it's a pretty straight ahead, pretty simple plugin to use. And again, it just sounds great. Again, I call this kind of a utility plugin. It's really just an EQ for really low kind of frequencies. You don't need to know much about EQ and the magic frequencies and all of that. You just throw it on, set it, forget it, and kind of move on. For 49 bucks, I don't think you can beat it. And again, I think you can, I got it for free. I think that deal still stands with them, if I'm not mistaken, Johnny.
I don't know. People are saying in the chat that you can get it from Audio Deluxe. You can get like all 50 for $100, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And again, I bought this many years ago, and I think you're right. AudioDeluxe.com. You can buy their whole VIP. I think they used to call it the VIP package, where you get all their plugins. And again, I have them all. I think once I got this, I said I want all of them, because if the rest of them are this good, you got a whole nice. But I'll be honest, I'm not crazy about most of them. I will tell you the ones that I do have that I use 4 of them, and I won't demo them all because I want Johnny to take his turn, but I'll show you which ones I do have. They're over here in my browser. There's 4 of them. The Clarisonic, another good one, if you're looking for some tape saturation and you don't have a tape plugin, the P&M Analoger is kind of a tape saturation plugin. Pretty cool. I like it. I mean, I don't like it as much as like the Slate tape machine, but let's say you don't have a tape machine, and let's say you just want, an affordable set of third-party plugins to get yourself rolling, and you want to buy the VIP package for $100. This comes with it. That's a good plugin. I also have this kind of, it's kind of an exciter, sort of. It's called the Monster Boost. And again, as you can see, all their plugins are laid out exactly the same way. The way their inputs and outputs, the meter, the VU meter, they have one big knob in the center and then 3 smaller knobs underneath it. Everything is laid out exactly the same. So once you learn one plugin, you can kind of get the feel of all of them. This is kind of a okay plugin. I use this sometimes on bass guitar if I want to add a little grit. You can use this as a push it, as get a little bit of a distortion maybe. And then the other plugin, which I sort of like, is the stereolyzer, which is, way to kind of do a stereo, give you some width on the master bus. Now, stereo wideners are funny plugins. You got to be careful with stereo wideners because they can get really phasey sounding really quickly, and this one will do that to you in a heartbeat. This is not what I typically use. But again, it was part of the VIP package, and I've tried it, and it's okay. I tend to use a plugin by Universal Audio, which is it's not a stereo widener. It's called what's it called? It's called the K Stereo. I'll show you what it looks like. Again, I won't demo it, but this was a kind of a quick demo, so I'll just show you what this looks like. If you have Universal Audio and you want a stereo widener or something that kind of mimics a stereo widener but doesn't sound like a stereo widener, is this plugin right here. This is called, what is this called? The K Stereo. It's called an ambient recovery plugin. And to get, without getting technical, just to say what this basically does, you put this as the last plug-in before the tape machine on your master bus, so second to the last plug-in. And what this is going to do is this is going to take your mix and it's going to give it like a little bit of a lift, and it kind of spreads everything out a little bit, and it gives it a more ambient feel, and it sounds a little wider, but it's very subtle, and it doesn't sound phasey. This is really used, and the mastering engineers use this plugin a lot. I use it in a mix. I use it on most of my mixes. Maybe next month, Johnny, I'll demo this. It's a very, very subtle thing, but it really, to demo it here wouldn't make any sense because you want to put it on a finished mix, but it really kind of just lifts everything up. It's kind of weird. It's like you can feel everything lift up and just push out just a little bit. You can hear the guitars get a little wider, the vocals get a little wider. It adds a little bit more reverb if you're using reverbs and delays in your mix. It adds a little bit more intensity to those. It just sounds very it's colorful, but it doesn't sound colorful, if that makes any sense. So anyway, that I'll demo that next time around. But so those are the plugins that I use from Plugin Mix. But again, the Clarisonic is a great plugin, and I think if you work with you know, drums that were recorded live, acoustic drums, and you struggle with kick drum sounds, this is an easy plugin that helps you get there very quickly. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that, Johnny. We have 32 people. Oh my goodness, that's a record for that plugin show.
Yep, it is a record.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for stopping by and checking this out. We're going to do this. I want to do this every week, but everyone's convincing me maybe we shouldn't do it every week. But anyhow, I like these kind of shows. So if anyone has any questions, Johnny, on the Clarisonic before we shut down and put you up on the screen, I'd be more than happy to answer it. Or if they want to save their questions till later, that's okay as well.
It looks like most people are saving it. They're making observations, like MGN Studios. Hey mate, how you doing? He says, I just checked the Clarisonics is $10 on Audio Deluxe. Nice. That's like
they buy it for $10. Buy that plugin.
That is like £4.50. I have to have that.
Yeah, Johnny, you should while you should be on your phone right now ordering up that plugin. For $10, you ought to buy it. No question about it. I think anyway. I mean, you heard what it does. It makes life really simple with kick drums.
Yeah. Well, what it did to that kick drum was just epic. You know,
right.
Just what it did to the low lows. Kind of like it kind of made it fatter without making it muddy, which is, well, that's just, if you know, finding a plugin that can do that. I have no idea what it's doing under the hood, but it really does sound really.
My Studio One crashed. Did you see that? How do you like that? That doesn't normally happen, folks. But that's okay. I was done with my part of the with my part of the demo. So now Johnny's back on the screen. Yeah, no, it must have. You know, I don't know. I might have done something. I might have screwed that up. But Studio One, well, it doesn't normally crash. I shouldn't say that. Let me make sure. Let's transition so we're both on the screen now. All right, there we are. We're back to our main shot. Yeah, well, you know that. Again, I tell everyone all the time in all my training videos as well, Command save or what's it, the Windows key save, because I don't care what DAW that you use, they all eventually crash for one reason or another. And Studio One does it the fewest. I haven't had that happen to me in a while. So anyway, yeah, so for $10, you got to buy that. Someone else in the chat room, Jim, is saying the BX Stereo Maker is coming on sale for $49 from Plugin Alliance. It's completely mono compatible. Oh, cool. Okay. That's cool. I don't, yeah, Plugin Alliance is, has a lot of cool plugins. And I've recently just acquired a bunch of them for our Learning to Mix web, which people know about Learning to Mix is coming anyway. We're going to be using, Plugin Alliance is going to be one of the plugin companies that's kind of sponsoring us. And so they sent me all their plugins.
Breaking news.
Yeah. So the BX Stereo is a great plugin. So Plugin Alliance has got a lot of cool plugins. We'll be doing some of those on that plugin show at one point or another. What else is going on in the chat? Any other? Robert says UA is too expensive for me. Yeah, you know, if you don't have the Universal Audio hardware and stuff, it's out of a lot of people's budgets. I like to show it just as an alternative. But I try to show native plugins as much as possible because, you know, not everybody has the budget to go ahead and spend that on the hardware, and I get that. So that's cool. So yeah, Johnny, if you want to jump in and show us your plugin, if you go full screen, then I will be able to shift our camera. So
okay, 1 second. Let's just get Studio One open so you don't have to see my giant ugly mug. There we go.
Okay, so let me go over to Studio One, and I'm just going to go to
Try and fix it.
Yeah, let me just go share screen. I'm going to transition this. This OBS, I'm really liking this OBS. For anybody who wants to see my last test, go to the last live stream where I'm testing out our third or fourth live stream software. You know, and the one that works the best is the one that didn't cost me any money. Go figure. So anyway, yeah, you're on the screen, Johnny. I could see your screen full shot, and you are in the bottom right-hand corner. So go ahead, Johnny, take it away. Show us what you got this month.
Well, for a start, OBS, I think, probably needs renamed to No BS.
Ah, that's very good.
Nice and early.
There's only a couple of features I would love, but it's free.
It's free.
It's free. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't get it working, but that's nothing to do with OBS. That's to do with my internet. I may as well send carrier pigeons, to be honest.
Okay, you take it away, and I'll monitor the chat.
Okay, I am going to demo a Waves plugin that I have just recently acquired and started using for dealing with audiobooks and voiceover stuff. I do a lot of the mixing for my church. So one of the things I do is I do all of the sermons. And our church is quite a large building. So there's a lot of ambient sound. So you've got, in the winter, you've got the heaters. You can hear those in the background. And then there's just the reverb of the room. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the background and people moving about and stuff that gets picked up by the little tie mic. So I've started using this plugin. It's called the NS1. I don't know if any of you have come across it before, but I am loving what it does. I have no idea how it does what it does, but it's very, very cool at it. So I have a couple of little demos, which I'm going to show you. One is me it's an excerpt of a talk I did a few years back. And I've compressed it a little bit, and we're going to run it through this NS1 because there was the sound of a heater in the background. So we want to get rid of that and get the voice to come up nice and clean. So let's have a listen to it without the NS1 on. And straight away you can hear the heater. And so it is that this is often how it goes when you are reading that passage in particular. So you can hear that heater in the background really quite loudly. So the NS1 is dead simple. It has one fader, and you move it up until the background goes away and the voice comes through nice and clear. And then you stop. You can push it too far if you're not careful. So we don't want to do that. But I'm going to show you kind of what happens when you do push it too far. So let's start off. We'll play the audio again, and I will start moving this fader up. And so it is that, it helps if the plugin is actually turned on, doesn't it? Somebody's probably typing in large capital letters in the chat. Turn it on, you fool. So I'd better do that. Okay, let's try again. And so it is that this is often how it goes when you are reading that passage in particular. It just takes a little bit of time to understand it. So what you need to do is you need to like back up a bit. Read maybe the whole page before that particular passage. So straight away, I've got this to about 40% on this. It goes up to 100. And pretty much that sound in the background has gone. I can push it further, but listen to what it kind of does to the audio if I push it too far. So if I go from here, it just takes a little bit of time to understand it. So what you need to do is you need to like back up a bit. Read maybe the whole page before that particular passage that you're wanting to study, that you're wanting to analyze. and then read the next paragraph or two after the bit that you're wanting to study and analyze. So you notice actually the vocal is actually still really clean, and there's not a whole lot of artifacting going on, but you can no longer hear the sound of the heater in the background. If I just keep going, and I'm going to push this right up to 100%, read all of that so that you've got the passage you're wanting to focus on in context. So you're reading what comes before, the subject matter that comes before it, the passage itself, and then the subject matter that comes after it. So it really does just totally take away all of that background sound and bring the vocal right up to the forefront. Now, the thing that it does do, if you push it all the way like I have done here, is it can make it sound a little bit artificial and a little bit clipped, which you don't want really. So what you want to do is just back it right off, start again, and find the sweet spot. And I think that for me was around about 45-50% on here. Read all of that so that you've got the passage you're wanting to focus on in context. So you're reading what comes before, the subject matter that comes before it, the passage itself, and then the subject matter that comes after it. So what you can do is you can follow this up with an EQ to get rid of any kind of lasting residue of the background sound, leaving your vocal clean and crystal clear in the foreground, which is what you want. So this works really well if you're doing something like an audiobook in a not particularly well treated room. This is great. This is really going to do the job for you, and it's just one fader, and you can quickly and easily find that sweet spot that is going to clean it up and make that voiceover nice and clear. Another good application for this is if you're recording guitar amps and you've got, maybe a fair amount of hum coming from your amp for whatever reason. This is another good way that you can clean that up. You can just push this fader up, and it should take away a lot of that hum between your playing. Now, when you're playing or when you're speaking into the mic, it's not going to necessarily take that sound away. As you could hear with the audio, you can still hear it when I'm speaking, that it's still there a little bit, but when I'm not speaking, it goes. So I guess the NS1 is called a noise suppressor, but I'm guessing that it's pretty much essentially an expander. But instead of having to adjust all of the attack and release and threshold and all of that kind of stuff that you have to do on an expander, this does it all with one fader. So quite how it has all the attack and release and threshold and ratio and all of that set up on under the hood, under this fader, I'm not really quite sure. But it does a great job with a simple voiceover. Now, it's a little bit harder if the background sound is louder than that, as I'm now going to demonstrate with something else. This is a piece of commentary from a cricket match, actually, that took place today. So this is fresh from the radio that I captured and brought it into Studio One. And so it's live radio commentary, and you can hear a lot of the background sound behind the commentary as it's all taking place. And so let's see if we can actually dial out any of that background noise without destroying the voiceover. So let's have a go, see what we can do. Let's unmute that.
Well, but he'll be in the position which he hasn't relished so far of looking to bowling into victory on the last day here. With, I think, by then, quite a lot of help, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was spinning sharply for him in the first innings.
Yeah, so as you can tell there, the background sound is too strong against the foreground vocal, the commentary. So even pushing this up to 100%, it's not going to work. It's just not going to do it. So this is an instance where this is probably not going to work for you. So I don't know what you would do if you wanted to try and clean that up and get the background sound in the background and the radio commentary much more upfront. I wouldn't know if there is another plugin that might do that better, but certainly this NS1 is not really going to do the job without destroying the vocal. So
yeah, that's a great plugin. That's a fantastic plug. You know where else that might be a good application? On a vocal track, to get rid of the headphone bleed.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Would that be a good application for that? Let me switch cameras here. So let's go back to our Skype cam here.
Yeah.
And then I will transition, and then let me there we go. Oh, good. We're both on the screen. Okay, great. Yeah, so that that would be I think for like headphone bleed between vocal passages, that might work really well. I think your idea of on the distorted guitar amplifier, just the hiss and the noise from if you're using a high gain amplifier, between lines, or if you're doing some kind of some kind of palm muted kind of chuggy thing in between those stops, you may hear the hiss. That might be a way to kind of tuck some of it out. It sounds like on that plugin, and I wrote it down, and someone in the chat was saying, I think it was Jim, was saying that that's on sale right now for $49. So thanks, Jim, for pointing that out. And I'll scroll back to the chat. People are saying it's like a gate. Yeah, I guess it is kind of like a gate.
Yeah, gate expander. I guess it's more like an expander than a gate, because it's fairly soft. Whereas a gate is kind of like, it's either wide open or tight shut.
Yeah, it's like it's a noise suppressor, like a guitar pedal, like the noise suppressor pedal you put on your guitar pedal board. It's kind of like that. But what I like about this plugin is you just have that one fader. Everything under the hood kind of automatically adjusts. You don't have to know much about threshold and release and all that stuff. You can just kind of set it. But as you said, and the thing I don't like to use with gates myself is they can sound really artificial and they can sound really choppy. So if you have a really, bad track, with a lot of racket going on in the background, it may be difficult. But what you did on that first example worked beautifully, I thought.
Yeah, it just totally took away the sound of the heater. And so you're just left with just the voice. But you do have to find that kind of balance point.
Yeah. Yep. So everyone's kind of checking it out and saying that that's kind of really cool. It's a noise reduction, right? Someone had posted, I think Jim said that with a coupon code, you go to waves.com, you could buy it for $49. And then with the coupon code that he put in the chat, we'll even give it to you a little bit less. Thanks for doing that, Jim. I appreciate that. And yeah, just so people know, Waves, I thought they would end their sale, but it seems to be that their plugin sale is still going on now for several weeks, where most of their most popular plugins are like between $29 and like $49.
Yeah.
So if you really wanted to get into some of those, some of their, their plugins, or if you were looking to get into some channel strips or some pull text or whatever, this is the time to buy them. I mean, because, you're not going to buy them for $29 for long. So you may want to check that out. So definitely head on over. And you can also go check audiodeluxe.com. That's the other place where someone mentioned in the chat, and it's where I always usually shop for my plugins first. They usually have the best prices. However, though, on the Waves deal, from what someone had said in the chat, and they're absolutely right, it might have been Jim. Jim, thanks again if it was you. I thought it was you. When you buy them from the Waves website, if you buy multiple plugins, they take money off the second and third plugin. You don't get that on audiodeluxe.com. So just be aware of that. If you're going to go on a small shopping trip, buy it from Waves, because you'll get a better deal, So that's really cool. So we got like 35 people watching, which is great. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that NS1 I picked up for, I think it was $25, $24, something like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I think the price has gone back up now, but before July 4th, it was $24, which works out to be £19.50. So, can you argue?
Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, you're not going to get them any cheaper than that. We got some. What's going on in the chat, guys? We got people talking about the Fader Port 8. I guess looks like someone may be buying one of those. Let's see. Andy Arthur's here. Andy, how are you? I said hi to you in the chat, but I want to say hi to you personally. How you doing, my friend? I haven't talked to you in a while. Let's see. Andy says he was also able to remove some of the hiss using an old recording using Isotope. I guess Isotope makes something that's similar to that. I don't know Isotope plugins very well, but I know they make good plugins. So you're probably right about that. Let's see what else is going on.
Well, Camtasia, the software that I use for doing my videos, has a built-in noise suppressor, which is very handy for me because for some reason my videos, just by nature, I get a little bit of hiss off of this mic, so it takes that away quite nicely without too much artifacting. You maybe get a tiny bit, like it's a little bit crispy up the top end, but
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that plugin's great. And someone mentioned in the chat that you can do the same thing with Vocal Writer, but I don't know. Vocal Writer is a little different.
yeah,
Maybe there is a way to really get under the hood of Vocal Writer and maybe do some similarities, but Vocal Writer is really just an automatic way to write a fader. It's not
Yep.
going to remove background noise. Now, what it can do, but like we were saying, Johnny, between maybe vocal passages, if between those passages where there's no vocals, but you hear some headphone bleed, if you want to dive the fader down, I guess you could do that. But I don't know that that can automatically do that through the entire song. I think you'd have to manually write it to do that. But Vocal Writer is another great plugin that I use on almost every mix. If again, I think it's like $30 right now, so you should buy that for $30. It's a nice plugin.
Oh, sure, for sure.
Anything else in the chat going on, Johnny? Any questions anybody has about any of the plugins? I know it's a kind of a shorter episode this time because Johnny Geib is not with us, and I wasn't prepared to do another demo. I didn't pull anything up to do it, so we could do a little bit of an extended Q&A if people want to do that. It looks like we got close to 35 or 40 people here, which is really fantastic.
Andy Arthur says that he reckons that the NS1 would be great for drum bleed as well. Yeah, it probably would.
Oh, good point, Andy. Yeah, good point. I wonder, yeah, I guess maybe on tom tracks, that are picking up, because I go in usually and cut all the toms. I usually cut all the bleed out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be, and again, you can use gates. A gate can do the same thing, but a gate's a little bit more tricky to set up. And if you're not used to using a gate and you don't set it up right, it sounds like you have a gate on it and it doesn't sound natural. So yeah, the NS1 might be good for that. Again, it's just one silly fader. I mean, really.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I prefer very, very natural sounding drums, so I don't tend to gate anything with the way I mix drums, the way I record them as well. I like I like very natural open tones. So
me as well. Let's see. Jeffrey or Peter's asking, speaking of waves, any thoughts on the One Knob series? They make a series of plugins called the One Knob. Just go to their website and check it out. And the reason why they're called the One Knob, it's just a plugin with one knob on it, and you turn it and it does stuff. I've used some of them. I think they're pretty cool. Again, if you're new, here's the thing with those kinds of plugins. If you are a again, the reason why I love the plugins, because it's super simple. You just turn the knob and something magical happens and it sounds great. The reason why I don't like those kinds of plugins when we're teaching, and I'm teaching beginners especially, is they never really understand what's going on. So for example, like that Clarisonic plugin that I showed you, it really is nothing more than just a low frequency EQ. That's really all it is. It's just a simplified EQ where you don't need to know anything really about EQ and frequency. You just turn the knobs and it sounds good. That's great. I like those plugins once you already understand how to take the Pro EQ in your DAW and go find the frequencies that make that kick drum pump. If you don't know that somewhere between 45 and 60 hertz is where the thickness of a kick drum is, or the fundamental frequency, I think you should know that before you just go get a one knob plugin. But the answer to your question is they sound great. I've used a bunch of them. They do work well. But it's they're intended for people who don't know anything about engineering or want to know anything about engineering, just want things to sound good. That's what those are intended for, and they're great. But you can overuse them, and you can make things sound pretty poor very quickly.
Yep.
And if you're watching our show, at least most people, and if you're following Johnny or following myself on YouTube for any length of time, it's probably because you're learning and trying to learn how to get better at the craft of mixing to become an engineer, whether it's a profession or a hobby, or you just want to make your home recording sound better. And in order to get past that beginner stage, you have to know. It's like being a musician. And at one point, if you want to be a really good musician, you have to understand some music theory. Right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You can make a living not knowing anything about music theory, but if you really want to get past a certain stage in your career, you have to know something other than just play completely by, except for maybe guitar. I guess guitar is the only instrument where you really don't have to know anything about music theory. You could play by ear. But piano and stuff, you can't, right? So, I mean, I don't know. So, I know it's kind of a weird analogy, but I like those kinds of plugins because they're simple. I don't like those kinds of plugins if people use those as an excuse to not really learn what's going on, really understand the basics of using EQ and compression.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way I should have said it the first time.
I guess a good analogy would be, you know, those keyboards that have like one fingered chords.
Yes. Yes.
cast
Yes. Yes.
one fingered chord.
Yes.
You know, one fingered chord versus, you know, it helps if you learn a little bit about how harmony works to
Right.
be able to, you know,
Right.
than just having a one fingered thing that you just go eh. Yeah, that, I mean, they have value, you know, when you're wanting to just get to making music and you don't really know how chords work, and, you know, then fair enough. But like you say, you get to a point where you want to figure out how to go from one chord to another, or how to go from one key to another. Then
Right.
you need to learn a little bit about harmony to do that.
Yeah. So there you go. So they are great, but you know, just proceed with caution. Vim is asking Dave, does the Clarisonic support full automation in all its parameters in Studio One? Yes, it does. So you can automate. I don't, but you can. Because for things like a kick drum, I'm not automating it. But the answer to your question is it does. MJN Studios says Gates confused the hell out of me. How about a demo of one? Johnny, do you want to do a demo of a gate? I'll be honest. I know how to use them. I don't use them very frequently. And I don't have any material pulled up in a DAW where I can actually demo it right this minute.
Actually, as it goes, neither do I. But I don't use them very often either. Because for me personally, I think they have a tendency to sound unnatural, and I prefer more natural organic sounds. And to be honest, a lot of the music that I get sent by my clients, they want that kind of nice open drum sound. They don't want kind of individual drums sounding very individual.
Like software drums.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've used, to me, if you have to use a gate so much because the bleed is so bad because it was so poorly recorded. And again, if you're the one recording we're talking about drums. If you're the one recording the drums, if you understand good mic placement, you should be able to get very minimal amount of bleed where you don't need a gate. Yep. That is absolutely possible. I don't care how big the drum kit is. I don't care what kind of drum kit it is. You can absolutely 100% do that. If you did not record the drums and you're just the poor soul that got the recording from someone and it's a mess and there's a lot of bleed. If it's so bad that gates don't really work too well on it, that's when I use drum replacement. Yeah. And if you use drum replacement like with the Steven Slate drums, and there are others, but I use Trigger. You don't have to go 100% sample, 100% unsampled. You can blend it together. So you can get that kind of fine balance if you don't want to have that singular sample like Johnny was just mentioning where it sounds like it's been replaced. So that you can do as opposed to using a gate. Because every time I've ever tried to use a gate, I've always had very limited success. And I spent hours messing around with it. And I just go, when you're mixing client projects, I don't want to spend an hour setting a gate. I'd rather just sample, replace it, and let's move on. You know what I mean? We got to go, you know? And so that's my feelings on gates.
I would say that I probably have better success. If I need to do anything remotely resembling gating, then I would use an expander to do the job, because an expander gives you a bit more flexibility with how much sustain you allow the sound to have before it closes.
Right.
So you can have it to open slowly and close slowly. Whereas a gate, it's pretty much kind of open. It's either fully open or fully closed. And so an expander, you can have it slightly ajar. And so I quite like that flexibility that you have with an expander. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You're having nice open sound, and you're making the best use of the room and all that. And a little bleed, because personally I like a little bleed.
Right.
Then, an expander will give you some control.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point. Richard's asking, what would be your Waves go-to plugins? You want to answer that first, Johnny? Johnny's got some plugins from Waves now. So what are the one you just bought a few of them? So those would be your go-tos.
They would, because I don't have that many. Yeah, I have recently rediscovered the SSL channel, which is just frankly awesome. I love how it sounds, and it just brings back memories of my early days on SSL consoles. The only thing now is I'm now hankering after actually touching one. But
Yeah.
the fact that I now have the sound of an SSL inside Studio One, inside this tiny little room, kind of makes me feel, much better about going back to a more analog sound. Because see, I've started that way, and then I've kind of moved all digital, and now I'm kind of drifting back into this way that now we have all the technology to make analog sound good in digital.
Right.
So,
but there is a way you got to think about your DAW a little bit differently now that you're using those plugins. Right, we talked about that last time, and it's odd. It's funny you say that, Johnny, because I am in the actual process of recording the Mixing with Analog Style Plugins Made Easy series, and I'm actually in about section 3, section 4 as of yesterday, where in section 1 I spent 45 minutes. I wrote it down. That video is 45 minutes long, and it talks about exactly what we just said, and showing you, and I'm describing and the philosophy about when you use those kinds of plugins, how you have to think differently the way your DAW is set up, and I demonstrate all of it. So it's real simple to use, because if you just take all those plugins, just slap them in there, and you kind of try to use them in the same way you would use your stock plugins, you don't get the most benefit. So stay tuned for that. It is coming. Yeah, my go-to Waves plugins. Again, the SSL channel strip is really good. I have that as well. Any of the Jack Joseph Puig, the Puig Tech, the Puig Child, the Pull Tech, the Fairchild emulation, any of the Chris Lord Algae stuff, the CLA 76s, the LA 3A, the CLA 2A, those are fantastic. And I just picked up on sale, just because it was only $29, was the DBX 160 compressor.
Ooh,
excellent compressor.
Is that still available?
Yes, it is. I believe it is. Go check it out, waves.com, if anyone wants to know. And I also just did some YouTube video reviews on the Helios channel strip, the Kramer Helios channel strip. Great channel strip, if you guys, that's a Waves plugin, as well as the Pi compressor. That's another really good one. So yeah, all of those are fantastic, and there isn't a bad sounding one in the bunch of the ones I've just said so far. So those would be my go-tos if I was going to use Waves. And I do use Waves more now than I have in recent months due to all the teaching we're doing. And I like them. I mean, I think they sound great. I really do. Waves makes good stuff.
Yeah, they do.
Let's see. What else here?
Like 15 years ago, and I'm even more impressed with them now coming back. So
yeah, they're really good. Herb says Waves is go-tos would be his Waves would be the CLA Signature Series. Yes, I agree. I have all of them. They're great. Let's see. Peter says, thanks, David. That's exactly what I want to see, those one-knot plugins as well. Cool. Robert says, Richard, I used the Kramer tape. The NLS. Oh, the NLS is another great plugin, Robert. Good call. I have that as well. That is kind of the virtual the VCC Slate Digital. Their version of that is called the NLS, which is the non-linear summing. It's a console emulator. It emulates the SSL, the Neve, and the one that I really love, which is the TG12345, the EMI board.
Yeah, I love that board.
And I have that channel strip as well by Waves, the TG12345, another fantastic channel strip. A little bit laid out. It operates a little differently than like an SSL channel strip, and it takes a little bit to wrap your head around it. But if you want like kind of that 60s Beatlesque kind of vibe, that's the console channel strip to have, the TG12345. You pair that up with the NLS, and you got yourself a real nice foundation for an analog mix right there. So that's another good one.
I have actually had the pleasure of seeing that TGI 12345 actually in person. I've been to Abbey Road Studios a few times, and so I've seen that console.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a famous console, right? And I believe I don't know the gentleman's name, but one of the engineers that designed that console, he moved on at one point and he designed the Red series, which is another wave, which I demonstrated in the last that plugin show, the Waves 17. The same person that I believe the same person that did the TG12345, I believe, or the Helios console, I don't remember, also designed that console, and those sound great. Got a lot of color. I mean, they're not transparent plugins. If you're looking for transparency, you're going down the wrong road. But if you're looking for analog color and tone, great plugins. Robert says the Kramer tape he uses. I use the Kramer tape as well. Great plugin. Let's see. MJN Studio says that he's learning piano now at the age of 46. Theory is a huge part of it. Absolutely right. Right? If you want to be a good piano player, you probably have to know some theory.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Jim says, in his honest opinion, the Waves H series is awesome. I've never used the H series, Jim. So that'd be something to check out too. I don't know, Johnny, if you've ever demoed any of their H series stuff.
Oh.
But that,
No.
I know they have a plugin. I've seen one's called the H Delay, Jim, I think it is. And I've seen some YouTube videos on it. It looks really cool. Again, whether you could go demo any of these Waves plugins for, I think, for 7 days or 14 days. But, you know, right now they're running a massive sale. Let's see. What other questions do we have or comments in the chat? Whoops, I kind of lost my place there.
Woodbeast has just arrived. Hello, Woodbeast.
Hi, Woodbeast. I didn't see you in there, but that's because I just kind of screwed up my chat screen here. Let me see if I can get back to where I was here. Let's see. Yeah, Kramer tape. Okay. Let's see. Just a lot of good comments. MJ Studio says he'll buy that one right away. Okay, cool. Go buy it.
I heard Richard Hargraves says all the Abbey Road plugins are amazing. And I would imagine, I don't have them, but I imagine they probably are. All the gear at Abbey Road is just epic. Having actually been there 2 or 3 times for a variety of reasons. One was to actually play a recording session for a film score there. So that's when I got to see the TG console. Very
cool. Yeah, all those, I have pretty much the whole Abbey Road collection at this point. I just bought them recently because they all went on sale. So, yeah, I think they sound great. They definitely have a much different vibe than like the SSL or like the Neve channel strips for sure. I mean, much different. Steven says he's falling in love with Sound Toys. Yep, Sound Toys make some good plugins as well. I have the Echo Boy delay, which is a fantastic plugin by Sound Toys.
Hear good things about that.
Yeah, it's like one of those things you don't need another delay when you have that. That's it. It's the only delay you need. It's got so many different delays and preset. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a really nice digital. It could be digital sounding, analog sounding, somewhere in between. It's really, really nice.
Awesome.
Anything else you see there in the chat, Johnny, that I've missed? We still got 38, 39 people here. This is great. This is fantastic, guys. Yeah, I know we only did a couple of plugins this time. We didn't know that our third leg of our stool, Johnny Guy, wasn't going to be with us until literally right before we got online. He was traveling. He thought he can do this from a hotel, but we just couldn't get there. So I wasn't prepared to do any more. I didn't prepare anything else, or else we would have done more, another plugin. But we will next time. Don't worry. But I do appreciate everyone kind of hanging out.
Yeah, people are talking about Decapitator at the moment.
I don't know that one. I've heard of it, but I've never used it.
Yeah, I hear good things about it as well. It's great for parallel compression from what I hear.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool. Are there any other questions? Anything else that anything you want to ask Johnny or myself about anything? Could be, it doesn't have to be plugins. Could be anything, home recording, anything at all. We've been running almost an hour, and we won't stay too long this time if there's no questions or nothing you guys want to chat about.
Woodby says, okay. I hate to ask, has anyone heard from JG? Yes, we both have, haven't we, Dave? I was
yes.
speaking to him. I was speaking to him in flight, actually.
Yeah, Johnny. You mean Johnny Geib?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just as I mentioned, he's on a road trip. I think in Texas, helping a client set up a home studio. So yeah, he's doing well. And he's sorry he couldn't make it today. We thought we were going to be able to do this. He was going to be able to do this from the road, but his travel schedule just got backed up, and he just can't be done. So right before we went live, I was talking to him, and he was in a department store buying something. So there was no way he was going to be able to demo any plugins from his cell
I,
phone in the department store.
I was talking to him in flight because I think the plane he's on had access to the internet, which is very, very cool. That you can do that nowadays. So he was chatting away to me on Facebook chat whilst he was in flight. So that's an unusual experience. I don't think I've ever done that, actually. Talk to somebody whilst they've been in flight.
Me neither. Let's see. What's someone saying? Hey, Dave, is it worth having a tube compressor in the rack, or is Slate's new series enough for vocals? Oh, you're talking about a hardware compressor versus just using the Slate stuff. I guess it would depend which one you're talking about. I mean, honestly, the Slate stuff is so good. Do you need a hardware tube compressor? No, you don't need it. It's just a matter of what your flavor is. I don't have any hardware compressors anymore, and I used to track through them all the time. I either track them through the Universal Audio, through the Unison technology, or just like with the Studio One, off the hardware. Tracking through the plugin into Studio One. That's kind of how I do it, and I think it's great. I think you could probably, to buy a good tube hardware compressor, I mean a good one, like an LA2 or something, you're talking about thousands of dollars.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
I mean, so you got to say to yourself, if I'm going to spend, even if I'm going to buy the PreSonus ADL, which I think is that's like a preamp with a compressor in it or something, right? It's not just strictly a compressor, but even that's almost $2,000. I mean, that's not a cheap component, right? So you got to say, if I'm going to spend a couple of $1,000s on a hardware compressor versus $150 on a really good plugin, is it, what is it, 10 times the cost? Is it 10 times better? No. It's probably not even, it's not even 10% better. It's probably, I don't even know that it's better. It's just, So my answer to that question would be, you can use plugins today. If you can record through your plugins and you have a pretty fast computer, and you have a decent set of plugins, whether it's Waves, whether it's Universal Audio, like a good tube compressor, like an LA2 or something, I think you're good there, honestly.
Yeah. There's a company called Warm Audio. I don't know if you've come across them before, Dave.
Absolutely.
They make some they make some very, very good tube compressors, and I think they do some FET compressors as well.
They do.
But again, if you're going to have hardware that, if you're going to have like a tube compressor, then the other thing you have to bear in mind is not only the cost of the gear, but the cost of maintaining the gear, right, and keeping it so that it runs optimally. Because if you just have it just sitting in your studio, after a while the tubes are gonna get past their best, and then you're not going to get the best accuracy out of the unit. So there's that to bear in mind.
Yeah, the Warm Audio stuff is great. I have owned the Pultecs.
You have.
I had them on my stereo bus left and right. I have demoed their LA2 and LA2A version. They call it the WA2A, I think. Excuse me. And I also did the 1176. And they all sound great. I sold the Pultecs for the simple fact is that I compared them to the Universal Audio counterparts. I mean, I did an exact A/B comparison. And again, we're you're splitting hairs in the difference of sound. And I just felt, honestly, at this stage, the UA plugins, and again, I'm sure the Waves are the same. I just UA because that's what I'm used to. They sound equally as good. I mean, that the Pultec, the Universal Audio Pultec sounds as good as that Warm Audio Pultec does. It just does. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to sit, with a specific piece of music in a dark room with your eyes closed, and you really wanted to focus and you really wanted to get really anal about this, can you hear a very slight shift? Maybe. In the mix, in the scheme of things, listening to it on the internet, through a crappy set of computer speakers or earbud, there's no difference. And so that's kind of how, I see it. I think they make great hardware. And if you're a hardware guy or gal and you really want to have the hardware and you want to twist the knobs and put your hands on something, Warm Audio is a great alternative because they're affordable. And they do sound really good. Compared to the plug-in counterparts, I would, at this point, I already have all the plugins. So
Yeah.
You know, what would be the point? They were fun to play with. I enjoyed working with them. It was cool to play around with them, but in a realistic sense, it just didn't make sense for me to have them. You know, it's really redundant in my mind. So,
Okay, question for you, David.
sure.
Rainer Pandolfi, I think his name is, says, I saw a tutorial from you to make a template and you add for every bus a second bus for parallel processing. How did you route them together? Was that via prefader sends or what?
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Prefader sends, exactly right. So yeah, so I use parallel compression on, it's in my template. I always have it set up. I have a busing system, and then whatever my set of buses are going to be, like drum bus, bass bus, guitar bus, I'll have a parallel compression track, parallel drums, parallel bass, parallel guitars in that example. And I don't always do parallel compression on all the instruments, but a lot of times I do. And it's all done with a pre-fader send. That's exactly right. And then I over compress on the parallel tracks. I mean, really over compress. And then I just take those faders and I just bring them up at the very end of the mix, just bring them up to taste, just to give the track a little bit more liveliness, a little bit more thickness. It's not really louder. It just gives it a little bit more of a hi-fi sound. I guess is the easiest way to describe it. But not a lot, because I don't want to, you know, ruin the dynamics of the tracks. And so a lot of people, most commonly people use it on drums. They'll parallel compress the kick snare. That's the most common way. But many years ago, I learned to not only do it on just kick snare, do it on all the drums, do it on all the instrumentation. But that means that throughout the rest of the mix, on your normal audio tracks, on your normal buses, most of the time, my compression is very light. And again, this is where we talk about these analog plugins. You'll see that in the Made Easy series, but a lot of it is I'm compressing very rarely any more than 2 or 3 dB on anything. I call it, the name I kind of came up for myself is, I call it controlled compression. So I'm just catching the peaks. I'm still retaining all the dynamics of the instrumentation. The only thing that may get maybe get a little more heavily compressed will be vocals if it's very dynamic. And then I use the parallel tracks to smash them and then tuck them up underneath those original tracks. And that gives you kind of the best of both worlds. You still have that nice open dynamic. The music kind of moves and breathes and pumps and breathes. And then you have that thickness of that over compressed sound laying in underneath. And you just kind of balance them together. And it's just a way to kind of finish off the mix. So yeah.
So what compressors would you be using for that kind of processing?
It doesn't really matter, but I mean, you know, I have a go-to, like for drums, I would typically use an 1176. For vocals, it's either a Fairchild or an LA2A, typically. For guitars, usually an LA3A. Now, if it's heavy distorted electric guitars, that might be depending on how the guitars were tracked. Are there you know, duplicates and quadruples of guitars? It depends on the song. If it's like a heavy metal song where it's just, you know, full on distorted guitars in your face, big amps, that might be a track I might not parallel compress, because the amp itself, the signal coming in is already heavily compressed. Yeah. And so if you over compress distorted guitars too much, they get really muddy and you lose all the articulation. And even though in a style like heavy metal where they're doing that lot of chugga 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 chugga, there's a lot of articulation happening in those palm mutes. And if you want to have some note definition, you want to be careful you don't over compress it. So on a track like that, I may not use parallel compression. There may be enough compression already going on in the tracks. But
distortion compressed by nature, wouldn't it? You know, it just, that's what distortion does. It compresses.
Yeah, exactly. It's already got, you know, and I don't try to mess with the guitar player if it's a rock guitar. You know, guitar players are a strange breed. I mean, because I'm one, and so I know they love their tone. They've spent decades trying to get the perfect tone, or whatever perfect means to them. I'm in the process of doing that right now. I know you probably can't see all the shit. I got pedals and I'm swapping guitars out, pickups and speaker cabinets and amplifiers, and trying to come up with what I feel is my tone. When that is recorded, I don't want an engineer messing with my tone because I've already done all the work, you know? So, in that case, I try to be real careful how I compress, how I shape the EQ. I may roll off the bottom end and may scoop out a little here and there, but I want to retain that tone that guitar player worked for 20 years to come up with. Because if
Oh,
you,
believe me, bass players are much the
yeah,
same.
yeah, they are. Right. You're right. They are. So it's the same kind of thing. So, but if it's like
Yeah.
an acoustic guitar, something where it needs to be parallel compressed, I might use like an LA3A. I love the 1176 Blue Stripe on acoustic guitars, where clean Fender-ish guitars. So that's what I would use for parallel compression. But I do have a bunch of, I don't know what months they are. You'd have to go back and look. A bunch of quick mix series where I do all parallel compression using the Slate. I think he calls it the Monster, which is that, yeah, and I use that on every single parallel track just to show that you don't need to go out and spend money on all these other plugins just to do good parallel compression. You could do it with that one plugin. So, you know, so I demonstrated a bunch of different ways.
Cool.
Which is really cool. Anybody got anything else? We still got, what, like 40 people, 38 people, something like that.
Yeah, it's something monstrously ridiculous that we've got in here. I'm very happy that we've got so many people in here.
Yeah, thanks guys for hanging out. I mean, again, especially the fact that we don't have a third plugin demo, but I appreciate everyone hanging out with us and asking questions and just kind of, you know, spending your time with us. That's really cool. I'm hoping we hope that these shows are helpful for you. We're doing now, I think, a live stream almost every week, pretty much. Different topics, but we're doing a live broadcast every week. And we'll probably do more in the future. So I hope you guys are digging it. Anything else, Johnny, that you see question-wise?
I'm just scrolling back up now because we were talking quite animatedly there about parallel compression, and I took my eye off the ball. A lot of people talking about UAD, Pultec transformers. FG Monster on your mix bus, says Richard Decker.
Yeah, that's the Slate Monster. Yeah, that's great. That's a great plugin.
Yeah,
it's a great plugin.
And talking about having to download Gobbler. For I think it's the Slate Digital Everything bundle, you have to have Gobbler. I think, is that right?
Say that again.
To purchase the Slate Everything bundle, you have to have Gobbler, I believe.
You have to have Gobbler, which is like, it's like a Dropbox type of a thing. But again, Gobbler is a free application. It is super easy to use, and you do have to have an iLock. People have asked me that. Yes, you do. If you could buy the iLock from Slate, when you buy their stuff, they'll send you an iLock. Or you can just buy it, on any, music website, Sweetwater, Musician's Friends, or, depending on where you live in the world.
Okay, Filthy Carve has a question. Filthy Carve, that's a great name. What kind of studio monitors do you two guys have, and why? What is good? And for about $500 for a pair. I think I've read his question right.
So what kind of monitors do we have, and what do we recommend at about $500 a pair? Well, what I have are not $500 a pair. I use Focal Solo B6s. They're about $2,600 a pair. Prior to that, I used Mackie HR8. I think it's called HR824s. It's the popular Mackie with the 8-inch woofer. I think those were about maybe $500 or $600 a piece, maybe $1,000 a pair.
Right.
And I sold those about 5 or 6 years ago and went to the Focals because the room I was in at the time, the 8-inch woofer was too much.
Right.
And I didn't like the way the high end translated. I always felt like on the Mackies, when I was done with my mix, I had to do a lot of running back and forth to the car. And I knew the room pretty well. I just, in my environment, I couldn't get those Mackies to sound right to my ear. So Sweetwater.com, my sales engineer, says, have you ever listened to Focal monitors? Now, Focal makes a whole range of monitors, a very affordable range. For $500 a pair, you can get a set of Focals, by the way, up to 5,000 or 6,000 a speaker and everything in between, okay? And I says, no. And he says, you may want to try these. They have this beryllium tweeter, and it's a smaller woofer. In your space, it'll probably work. And I love them. I've had them for, I think, 6 years now. And once I got used to them and once I broke them in, I could take this mix. I don't even leave the room anymore. I don't have to leave the room. I know what the mix is going to translate every single time. And so that's what I use. So Focal would be the brand that I would recommend, even at the $500 price point. I want to say the model is the CS or the CM model. If you go to sweetwater.com and just search Focal monitors, they'll show you the breakdown. It's the CS or the CM series. To me, I haven't heard the real affordable ones, but I just know Focals, and now I have a set of Focal headphones I talked about last week. Everything they make sounds great. They really make really good stuff. And so I would tell you, take a listen to those. What do you use, Johnny? I forget what I think you use KRKs, don't you?
That's right. I'm using the Rocket 5s, the second generation ones. I've had those since, let me think, 2011, I think I've had them. So about the same kind of time, 6 years. And for this very, very small room, they're great. There's not too much low end and there's not too much high end in this room, which is good for me because I have I've mentioned this before to you, David, or even on this live stream. I don't think I mentioned it before, but I have tinnitus.
Yeah, you've mentioned that to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to mix through tinnitus, which is always entertaining.
Yeah.
And sometimes I spoke to our mutual friend Pete Woj about it as well, because he has it as well. And so he and I have been back and forth trading stories about tinnitus, and sometimes it can be very debilitating, and it can be very, very loud, and I can't work when that happens. But these have been perfect for my condition and perfect for my needs in this space. But I dare say, if when we move out of this apartment and I have a bigger space, then maybe I would need a bigger size cone, so maybe up to 6 or 8, even 8. It would depend upon the room, but for me, it's a small room, so I don't need a lot of low end in here because the throwback to that wall is only about
a foot and a half.
It's only about 10 feet from there, so
right.
A 16-foot wave is going to hit the door before it's even fully developed. So, the good thing about the KRKs is that it does have like a sort of EQ on the back, so you can roll off quite a lot of the low end to what your room requires. So they're really great for that, and they're affordable. They're very, very durable as well. But I've heard the Presonus Eris 5s are a very, very good equivalent.
Yeah, I haven't heard those. I think Johnny Geib uses those, or he demoed them, and he said they were really good. So if he tells me they're good, I believe him. I haven't heard them myself.
Yeah, he uses the Eris 5s, and he has a set of Eris 4.5s as well.
Right. We got a lot of chatter going on. Okay, so Skyhawk77 says, you don't need a dozen compressors. You only need one and an EQ, both of which are available in Studio One by default. You're absolutely right. You don't need, let's what you just said. You don't need anything. You need a stock EQ and a stock compressor. And until you can get a good mix with those, you don't need anything else. When you get beyond that, we've mentioned this a bunch of times, but he makes a very good point, or maybe he or she, not sure, but either way, very good point. But when you start moving into these other kind of plugins that we're talking about are really more of the analog style of mixing. Mm-hmm. You don't need, but when you have, and again, it's funny. I'm right in the middle of recording this Homemade Easy series, and I talk about this exact thing. It's almost like, were you in my studio when I was doing that? Did you think that? When you have 5 different compressors, let's say an 1176, doesn't matter what plugin company, an LA2A, a Neve 33609, and an SSL, those 4. You have 4 compressors that do exactly what your stock compressor does. It compresses. You also have 4 compressors that can be used in a tonally, completely different way. They sound totally different from each other, from one to the other. So now you have 5 different tools in your toolbox. Think of it as like, I don't know if you're a guitar player, but I'm a guitar player. So you have a Fender, you have a Gibson Les Paul, you have a Telecaster. and let's say you have an Ibanez. Now, they're all going to have different sounds. Those 4 guitars all do the same thing. You can play great guitar in all of them. We can all name our 50 different guitar heroes that played those 4 style guitars. Those 4 style guitars, depending on the pickups, I get it, sound completely different. And if you're a guitar player, most guitar players, in my studio, I have a Gibson style guitar. I have a Fender style guitar. I have a Telecaster style. Why? Because they sound completely different. And that's the way I think about EQ and compression.
Yep.
Right. And so again, this is this whole thing about it's a totally different way of mixing. And it's not better than what a stock compressor does. It's different. And so your point is exactly correct. But that's why we talk about why do you have all these compressors and EQs? Because I don't just think of them as compressors and EQs. The way an SSL EQ sounds on a male rock vocal is totally different than what a Neve EQ would sound like. Even if you put all the frequencies and you set them to the exact settings, they don't sound the same. One will work better than another. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it.
I believe we even demonstrated that to a certain extent.
We did.
On the very first episode where we were looking at SSL and various models thereof, I think. And
yeah, we did. Yeah, if you go back to the first that plug-in show or something, yeah, we did that. We did that. We looked at a couple of different. We looked at the same exact one from 2 different manufacturers, and they sound different.
Yeah.
So yeah. Steven says, Dave, these headphones you use are cheap in the UK. Okay. The headphones I'm using are the Focal Spirits. I don't know what they are in the UK, but in the US, they're about $350.
That's going to be probably about 180, 200 pounds. I'm not sure. My maths was never my strong point.
And I just got these. I used to use KRK, the KNS Pro 8400s, which are about $150 US for years, and those sounded great. Those were great mixing headphones. I got the Focals because I don't know. I was talking to someone again. They came out with these, and someone had said to me they sound just like the Solo B6 monitors, which I own. And I said, "Oh, do they really?" You know, and I'm a sucker for stuff like, you know, I didn't need to buy these stupid things. I said, but let me try them. So I bought them, and by golly, they sound almost exactly. I did a lot of taking my headphones on and off and listening to the room, and they're exactly the same. And the reason why I really wanted something that sounded exactly like my monitors or as close as I can get is because now what I'm doing a lot more these days are teaching and tutorials, and all of that mixing I'm doing is done in headphones now. Yeah. It's not done on monitors, and then I record a video and show you what I did in headphones. They're being done in headphones from scratch. So I really wanted something that was so familiar to me with my monitors, so that's why I bought them. And so if you have a room that's not conducive to good mixing, or if you don't have a way to put acoustic treatment, or what we were kind of talking about earlier, you could go out and spend a lot of money on monitors, or you could just buy a really good set of headphones. You know, these headphones, I would say, because I've been using them now a couple of months, I would feel perfectly safe mixing a client's project on these and only these, and not feel that they would not translate. That's how good they are.
That's cool. Stephen McKeever, who is a fellow countryman, he says they're about 160 pounds, mostly because the exchange rate is almost parity. It's almost 1-to-1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Not great for you know, buying stuff and selling stuff to a US audience, but I'll take the hit.
Yeah. Robert says, yeah, like your guitar amps, they sound different. Yeah, that's a good point. Talking about EQs and compress. Right. You can buy a Fender amp. You could buy, you know, to pick any, right? The amps sound different. What's different? They're all voiced a little differently. They all have a different application. So yeah, you don't need 4 amplifiers, but if you're someone in the studio who wants 4 different types of guitar tones, pretty difficult to get it out of one single amp. It can be done, but it's not that simple.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see. Dave, how are you? How are the Focal headphones holding up the strap? What does it say? The strap. Oh, the strap got a bit of slip. Oh, on gear slip. Oh, yeah. The thing is, people said about these headphones, the strap kind of broke on them. I've only had them a couple of months, you know, and I'm gentle with my stuff, but the strap is fine. and it's not uncomfortable in any way, but I have heard that there was maybe a batch, or at one point when they first came out, they were having problems where the strap was breaking, the headband, but I haven't experienced that, and knock on wood, hopefully I won't. I think they have a 2 or 3 year warranty when you buy them. And I buy all my stuff from Sweetwater, so I know within 2 or 3 years, if that's the warranty, if the strap breaks, I know Sweetwater will send me a new pair. I won't even need to deal with Focal. That's why I love Sweetwater.com. Josh Estock, extension 1375, if you want to talk to a really good sales engineer.
You're going to make him rich. You know that, don't you?
Well, he keeps sending me free stuff, so I just keep. He tells me all the time. People mention my name when they call him, and I can't even believe that many people watch. Sometimes I forget how many people actually see these see these videos. But he's helped me out a lot, and he's a really good guy. And I hey, so I don't mind sending him some business. He'll treat you really well. And what I like about Sweetwater too is they don't just try to sell you stuff. You know what I mean? They really take the time. If you're not sure what to get, or if you have a problem with any piece of gear and say, I'm looking for this kind of thing. I don't know what to buy. I have this kind of a budget. They're not just going to try to sell you any old thing. They're really going to try to put you in the right product. And what I love about them is if you try something and don't like it, you send it back to them. No questions asked. And they'll pay for shipping both ways. They're really good like that. I know there's other companies like that, but I've been dealing with them for, 10 years, and I've never had a problem with Sweetwater. They're fantastic to deal with. I find anyway. Let's see. Any other questions? Let's see. Anything else you see there?
Bobby Booth says, I'll keep by my Presonus HD7s, and I have a pair of those on my head right now.
How do you like them for mixing? I
like them. Actually, as one that has tinnitus issues, they're very, very good because they help me particularly balance the top end, because with tinnitus your instinct is to dial the top end down because you already have the top end ringing in your ears.
Right.
So you dial it down, which can make your mixes darker. So, but these have such a good management of the upper end. I can use these to get the upper end balanced nice so that my mixes are not so dark.
Yeah, and they also make some software that you could put on the master bus. There's different software emulations where you can mix on headphones, and it emulates different rooms. I've used a few of them. I've never been happy with them, but I know people that do like it, so that might be something to try. I know Audified makes the Mix Checker, which I did a plugin review on. That's a really good plugin for testing your simulating different listening environments. Cars and smartphones and stuff. Pretty darn close. Really good reference. It's really, really good for referencing. Let's see. RJ says, Dave, do more Studio Live Series 3 videos, please, anytime soon. I would love to. The problem is the Studio Live 3 doesn't do what I want it to do quite yet. I would have thought by now it would have. There was a time when I first unboxed the Studio Live, I said, well, I'm going to put all these multiple cameras and we're going to mix through the board, and you can do all of that. The problem is the workaround to do that is such a pain in the rear, to be honest, that I just said, screw it. I'm not even going to go through it because the DAW surface control should be coming soon. That's what I hear. So I haven't done any more videos because there's really nothing for me to show you other than what I've already done. Right now I'm using it as a big, it's like a big monitor station, which is really what I'm doing with it, but I'm not mixing with it. I could, but all the routing that has to be done, bringing it into Studio One, back to the Studio Live, print it on a track, it's a pain in the butt to do that with the amount of mixing that I do. That I just mix it all in the box, and I'm just waiting for this thing, because that's how I did it before I had this. I didn't have the faders. I had my Apollo. I had to do it that way. So as soon as it becomes a surface control and it works with Studio One, I am going to do a lot of videos on it. I do promise I will. But right now, there's really no reason to do it.
What I understand of the 3.5 release of Studio One, that there is some stuff on the Series 3 that you can now have control over in Studio One, but I think it's just the preamps, at the moment. But I'm guessing that's kind of baby steps towards what they're really going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's in development, and I know it's being worked on, and so we're just going to have to wait and see. We'll have to just wait and see. But yeah, once that's done, we'll do a lot more videos. I think it's a great, it's a great mixer. I've done some recording with it, and it sounds great. I mean, the preamps sound really, really good. So I love it. You know, I said, so if you're in the market for a mixer and you want a surface control, you can wait for it to come out. You know, a lot of people have said, well, I'm not buying this thing until I know it's going to actually work, because that's why I'm buying it. And I hear you. I hear you. You know, you don't want to spend your money and then come find out something went wrong, and they're really not going to do that. But I believe they are going to do that. I know they are. It's just a matter of when. Let's see. Richard asked, do you use headphone calibration? No. I don't. I know people that do. I've just never tried it. Never had a need to myself.
All I did was I just plugged my headphones in and I just ran Steely Dan records for 12 hours. And,
yeah, I broke them in. Yeah, I did that with the Focals. The literature actually says you should do that for, I think they say 72 hours. And that's exactly what I did. I just ran it. I just ran it over and over and over and over. And it did make them sound a little bit better, a little warmer once the drivers broke in. Stephen asks, is there either a plug-in or a technique to slightly beef up a recorded telly? It can sound thin, or a Telecaster. Yeah, EQ and compression. Compression probably more so than EQ. Yeah, tellies can sound brittle and thin depending on the style of music you're going for. So yeah, EQ certainly. And you probably want to look around that 200 hertz mark, somewhere in that 200 to 350. Or even as low as 100, depending on how thin it is, and compression. And instead of trying to beef up the low end, also roll off some of the top end if it's sounding a little too brittle. That'll give you the sound appearance that it's heavier sounding if you roll off the top end a little bit.
Yeah, the opposite of if you high pass filter as well.
Yeah. Herb says SonarWorks calibration is great. Oh, great, Herb! I didn't know that. That's excellent. Thanks for that tip. Joe wants to know what was the name of the very first plugin we talked about? It's the Clary Sonic by Plugin Mix. CLARISONIC, or no, SONIX. Aha, yeah. It's the blue plugin, the Clary Sonic. What else we have going on?
What do you hope or expect to be able to do with the Studio Live Series 3 when DAW control firmware is released? Control the DAW, I would say.
Honestly, really, for me, it was really having the 32 faders. And then be able to bank over and truly have fully recall, because it's all the automation, everything will be recalled. So whatever happens in the Studio One session will be locked into the memory of the board. Not so much, although I think you'll be able to control you'll be able to control the fat channel plugins, which I think you could do now.
Yes, you can.
But I don't really typically use the fat channel because of all the other plugins that I have, but that's something that you'll be able to do. So for me, it was the faders. That was the big thing for me. You know, I didn't want a fader port 8, even though I didn't want it. I wanted something that was like a large format console. As a matter of fact, I wish this thing was a 48 channel board and not a third, but you can just bank over. But that's really what I wanted it for. That was the big, it's an awfully big investment just to do that, I know. But I like that tactile feel. You know, I like automating and writing vocals with a physical. I used to use the single channel fader port to do all my automation. Yep. But I like to be able to automate maybe 2 or 3 tracks at a time, which I know you could do on the fader port 8. But the fader port 8, for me, didn't fit into my workflow. But Johnny Guide uses it and loves it. So, I mean, it's all about your workflow. It's a great piece of gear. I just, So that's what now you're talking, Johnny, that once you're eventually going to maybe get the 16 channel you were saying. The Series 3.
When I have room for it, I'd love to do that. Again, for the same reason, especially now that I have the SSL channel strip in Studio One, I really want to be able to actually move that sucker, So I would love to have the 16 channel when that's available here. But again, for me, it's a matter of space.
Physical space,
Actual physical space on my desk in particular is a premium at the moment. I'm wanting to switch up my PreSonus Audio Box USB for the new Studio 2.6 interface, which is just arrived in the UK. So I would really love to get that in here. But again, I've got to measure it up and make sure that I have, we're talking millimeters
Right. Well, yeah. This is a big,
to get the thing fit on my desk.
Yeah,
So.
I was lucky that this fit, and it almost looks like it's built into the desk. I got lucky, but you do need a big space for it. You do. Skip Jones says he just got word that Johnny Gibe is napping in a cold hotel room in Texas, so that's good. Okay, he got to his hotel safe and sound. That's great. I'm sure he already told me he'll be watching this a little bit later tonight. So, hey Johnny, wish you could be with us. Safe trip back. Make sure you hit me up when you get back. Let me know you got home safe. Let's see. Steven's saying, I think the Fader Port 8 is better for home use. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, it's a good piece of gear. Let's see. Robert Booth says Johnny's napping. I'm not sure. Steven says, I mean, if you are not looking for commissions. I'm not sure if Steven said something up above that I didn't read. I'm not sure what that means exactly. The chat's moving pretty quick. Someone says a telly beef up trick, double track, 30 milliseconds delay, cut the highs, the lows, broad boost the mids, and double track. Yep, Carl, thanks for the tip. Yep, all those things would absolutely, I mean, every track recorded's a little different, but those are some great things to try. Let's see, Filthy Curve, Johnny and Dave, what do you expect to do? Oh, okay, we just read that question. Okay.
I think he's added to it. He says after that, he says, you can't do that now. No, you cannot.
No. You can, if you want to mix on the board, you can. But, and I do on my YouTube channel, there is, under the playlist Studio Live 32, there is a video showing you how to set up the routing in Studio One, how to bring it back in through the board, and how to do that. I'm not going to explain it now. There's a 5 or 6 step process, but you can mix with the board. The problem is that what you have to do then is you have to you can do it. Just go watch the video. But it's a pain. It really is. It's a pain.
Yeah.
It's a real pain. I mean, I guess if they weren't going to come out with the surface control and that was the only way you can do it, but you would get the tactile feel, I would set up templates and I would try to streamline it. But but for now it's just like I haven't done it. But yeah, so
I used to have a console in the studio that I had in Edinburgh. In Edinburgh. I'm in Edinburgh, in London, because I used to have 2 studios. Hence the name Johnny Lipton Studios. I had a studio here and a studio in London because I was betwixt the 2 cities. And the one down in London did have a console. It had, and this was my first ever sort of discovery of PreSonus. I had their what they now call their classic 32. A 3242 console. And yes, you had to do a bit of a convoluted process to route out of Cubase, as I was using at the time, through it and then back in again. Bit of a pain in the butt, but yes, I do miss actually working a console.
Yeah, it's just a matter of what you like. Yeah, you're right. The way you would mix on the board you just described is the same thing you can do on this new board. It's the same way. Yep. It's the same exact thing. Richie says, Dave, I had my Studio Live 32 set up in a way that I just pipeline the mix through Studio One 3 in real time, no print track, so it can be pretty straightforward. What interface are you using? I'm using the Studio Live as an interface. So yeah, I would be interested to hear what you did, more specifically, maybe offline. But yeah, I'm using the Studio Live as the interface as well. So everything is going through it and only it. And that's really how I have it being used. Let's see. Anything else? Any other questions? Let's see. Steven says, I mean, you guys have like studios. I'm a hobbyist. Oh, where Steven was saying up a little earlier, the Fader Port 8 because you're a hobbyist. No, yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, I totally get it. This could be overkill for you. It's overkill for a lot of people. It's It's probably overkill for me, to be completely honest. Now that I think about it, why did I buy this thing? No, but I mean, it's, part of, right. When you do this for a living, it's a little different. One, because when you work on this thing 6, 8, 9 hours a day, yeah, there's, every now and again, you like to change things up. You like new pieces of gear. You like different plugins. It also helps you from getting stale, I
Yes.
know it does for me. I mean, especially the plug-in thing. You know, yeah, we talked earlier about, yeah, it's different tones and it's this and that. And then some of it, quite honestly, is I want to see a different GUI on the screen. I want to
Mm,
twist different knobs. I want to experiment. You know, it gets very mixing is one of those things where, you know, you have two parts of mixing in my mind. One of them is not really mixing, but people call it mixing. You have the technical part of mixing, which is, you know, cleaning all your tracks and fading and editing and de-essing and, you know, compression and EQ. To me, using compression and EQ is really not mixing. To me, that's technical. And then once all that's done, automation, sweetening, reverbs, delays, those kinds of things are mixing. You know, flying in
yeah.
vocals, all those kinds of things. And so with DAW mixing, because you don't have all the hardware and everything's on a screen, you can get to the point where everything comes very automatic. It comes very redundant, you know? You're throwing the
Yeah.
same plugins on, you're setting them to the same settings, and you're streamlining things, and then everything kind of gets kind of stale. And for
Mm,
me, I don't know, you lose some of that creativity. So one of the ways that I kind of keep fresh, if you will, is I use different plugins. And I like
yeah.
it. You know, it's also, you know, it's again, it's the same thing. If you're a guitar player, why do you have 30 guitar pedals?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
many do you use? Really? You know, I mean, it's, you know, it's, you don't need any of that stuff, but it's fun. It's part of the hobby. But, you know, you also got to
Yeah.
take into consideration your budget and, you know, what you can afford to do. And so I'm not trying to justify all the stuff. I'm just saying, you know, I'm just being honest and say that's why I do it the way I do it. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that's why I do it. You know, I'm a geek and I like this stuff and I'm down here all day long, you know, and I like looking at different things and playing with different things and trying out new software and doing these types of things that keep me kind of fresh. So when I do a mix, it's not so robotic, you know, it's not
Yeah.
so, you know, I don't know how you feel about that, Johnny, but that's how it always kind of seems for me.
Yeah, I think if you're doing it full time, there is a danger where if you have like set plugins that you use extremely regularly and therefore you know exactly what you're going to set them to, mixing can become dangerously formulaic. And so, you know, being able to change it up by using different plugins, by finding a different sound, by having, you know, just making tweaks to your workflow, trying something different, you know, can actually just bring a breath of fresh air to your mixing. It's, you know, it's why bass players, guitar players, we're on an endless quest to find the perfect set of strings. Or, you know, saxophone players, I play saxophone as well, we're on the quest to find the perfect combination of mouthpiece and reed. You know,
Right.
I have a drawer in my desk here that is filled with boxes of different reeds and cases, you know, boxes filled with different mouthpieces because I've been on a quest to try and find what is, you know, what's going to give me that perfect sound that I hear up here.
Right.
Haven't got it yet. I've been at the moment. I think I'm very close to it with the mouthpiece and reed that I'm using at the moment. But who's to say in 6 months' time I might actually go, you know what? Maybe I need to, you know, there's something else I need to try. You know, and
Yeah, it gets you from being stale. I totally get it. I mean, it's just like guitar tone, and like we talked about earlier with amplifiers and guitars and pedals, and you know, you're never done. You know, is you know, you get used to something and you want to try something different. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But a lot of people say, you know, someone said in the chat a few minutes ago, yeah, I can't have everything. Right. I don't have everything.
no,
You know, and when you're doing this as a hobbyist, it's almost sometimes a little bit easier to acquire more stuff if you have some disposable income because there's no business ramifications. When you do this for a business, everything I buy is, you know, there's a business piece of it I have to think about. You know, profitability. How I could just keep buying gear, but then I don't make any money because all the money goes back into the gear. And so sometimes it gets a little, you know, sometimes there's too much out there and you get a little too tempted. And you know, and I've impulse buyed a million times, like all you have, you know.
yeah,
And then I try to justify it in my own mind. Richard asks, David, do you still use the Console 1? No, and that was another kind of nice segue. That was another piece of gear that I paid almost nothing for. Console 1 is made by Softtube, It's like a way to have a hands-on tactile feel on a channel strip. And what was great about that is that you can control the universal audio plugins with the hardware, which is kind of neat. No, I don't use it anymore. The reason why is because I put it in my workflow. It was like the Fader Port 8. It was great. I put it in my workflow, but it didn't feel like a console to me, like this does, which you guys can't see. But there's 32 physical faders, 1-to-1, like I did when I first started engineering in a studio that had an SSL in it. You know, that's just. Yep. And so it's a great piece of gear. It sounds really good, but it didn't really fit into my workflow. So sometimes what I find myself doing is, you know, it's just you try things and not everything's a home run. And sometimes I buy something. I usually try to buy stuff like that when I want to experiment used where I can get it at a really good price so I can recoup some of my money or most of my money. And usually I do. But sometimes I take a loss, a slight loss. I can't tell you how many times I've bought guitar pedals, you know, because you hear some demo on YouTube and it never sound, you know, and unless you have a local store, which I don't, to go try all these things, sometimes you're buying on a leap of faith. And I'll buy a pedal, I'll try it out, it's okay, I'm not in love with it, and I'll sell it, and maybe I'll lose $10 on it. And I kind of look at that as like a rental fee. Like I rented the pedal for a week and I sold it on eBay. You know, yeah. and I do the same thing with hardware in my studio. So, you know, that's just kind of, yeah.
Same thing with mouthpieces. Obviously, you can't do that with reeds, but yeah, I do that with mouthpieces as well. There's actually an online place now. My dad, who plays tenor sax, he turned me on to this place that he had heard one of his students talking about, where you can actually trade mouthpieces. You know, somebody will put it up, and you know,
right.
Yeah, and you can just trade. So, you know, I could get myself a Dave Godala mouthpiece, and I could trade it in. I could trade my Autolink in for it if I wanted to. Not that I would do that because, you know, my Autolink is like 80 years old. Not going to do that. But,
right. But yeah, the point is that you could try stuff out and your limited exposure financially until you find something you like. Jim says, we all buy what we desire and not so much what we need. Very true.
Spot on.
And then he says, if you love something, life is short. It's another good point. You know, it's another good point. It's like, you know, what are you in this for? Most of the people that are watching this, I think, and most of the people that follow me are hobbyists, or they're just doing this for the love of recording and playing and mixing their music, and they're not doing this as a business, and that's totally fine. And if that's your hobby and if that's your passion, you know, Jim, you make a good point. You get up, you go to work, you come home. You do your family. If you get up, you go to work, you come home. You get up, you go to work, you come home. If you don't do anything, you know, if you don't have anything else, you know, what's life for? And for some people, like all us crazy 28 people that are still here after an hour and 47 minutes, they're into this recording thing. They're into the making music, into making music sound good and playing with compressors and EQs. That's our little club, right? And so you're right. Life is short, you know. You gotta find that balance. And for everybody, it's different, and there's no right or wrong to any of this stuff. And we always try to preach here, at least I do, and I know Johnny, you do as well, because we talk about this a lot. You don't need any of this stuff.
Nope.
But if you want this stuff, we just try to share with you why we do what we do. And I just try to be honest. Not on here selling you things. I don't work for any of these companies. They don't pay me, although they should. I just tell right. They ought to. All the money, all the sales that I've given all these companies we've talked about is unbelievable. But you know what? We do it because we love it. And you want to know what I use and why, and I just give you my honest opinion. And some of you think I'm crazy, and some of you think it's great, and some of you listen to the advice, and some of you don't, and it's all good. It's all good. It's no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I think both of us would want to caution on, and that is gas.
Yes.
Gear acquisition syndrome. You know, don't just go buy plugins because you've heard me and Dave and Johnny Guy extolling the virtues of said plugins. You know, what we do is we show and we offer, and you can make an informed choice of your own. But don't just go buying it for just because we've said we think it's great. You know, try it for yourself first.
Yeah, demo it
Demo it. If
for
there's a
free.
demo, if there's a demo for it, I know for some plugin manufacturers they don't do demos, but for the ones that do, make the most use out of those 14-day demos and check them out, and then you can decide.
And I think all the plugin companies that we typically talk about, Wave, Slate Digital,
Yep.
Universal Audio, they all do demos. All of them do. And so, yeah, just, demo them, that's all you have to do. But for as many videos, and I know lately we've been talking more about analog plugins but for as many videos as we do talking about all that other stuff, we do just as much teaching with stocks plugins.
Yeah.
Go on my website. I got, out of all the quick mix series, half of them are done just with stock plugins, just to prove the point that you don't need all this other stuff.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of, what you want to do.
My EP, my 5-song EP belonging to Tomorrow, I mixed that entire record using the Pro EQ, the compressor, the room reverb, and the analog delay. 4 plugins that are native in Studio One. I did the whole record using just those 4 plugins.
Yeah, and the record sounds good. So there you go. If you know how to use them, the record sounds really good.
That's exactly the point. It's not what you use, it's how you use it.
Right. It's exactly right. Robert says, most of you guys that come from the analog world like to have the fader feel. Yeah, that's true. Even though I went without the fader feel in the box for 10 years? And now it's getting back to it. And I could mix just as effectively with or without faders. We were just talking, it's time to change it back up and go back. And that's why I bought a console. But you don't need it. Steven says, Dave, you ought to stand for, what did it say, election?
Where's that? Oh, yeah, he does.
What do you mean, I should run for an election?
Yeah, Steve McKeever, he says, you ought to stand for election.
No, I don't like politics at all. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
I should say I have stood for election.
You have?
Yeah, I have.
Good for you.
I didn't succeed, but I have stood.
Yeah, you tried. Yep. Rock Chunk says, you have to have a man cave. Hobbies are cool. Shut the door and chill. I agree.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. Right? I'll keep going back to it. I think of these plugins and all this recording stuff just the way I think about guitars and guitar pedals. And you want to talk about crazy people. Go talk to guitar players. They got way more stuff than they ever need.
Pete Woj.
And Pete Woj. And Pete, you're probably not watching this live, but you will at some point. He just got me into... I was at Pete Woj's last week recording the promo video for learningtomix.com, which is coming soon, and we did a guitar trade. Within an hour of me being there, I left his house with a guitar, shipped him a guitar. I came home and bought something new. It's just... It's the thing, we like to do. He's crazy. He's got guitars all over the place. You only can play one at a time. But I get it. I left his house with a guitar in my hands. I mean,
yeah,
crazy. Beautiful Paul Reed Smith guitar too. He's got really nice guitars.
Well,
Pete only has really good stuff. He doesn't have any. He has really good stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Richard says, I think stock reverbs are noticeable and not as good as third party. That's a very good point, Richard, and I talk about that in my new series as well. If you, and I think I did this on one of my last YouTube videos. Oh, yes. I did a YouTube video on the pure plate reverb by Universal Audio, and I talk about that exact point, that where I noticed the biggest difference between third party and stock is reverbs and delays. Compressors and EQs, again, the tone thing, but they're a little more subtle. But a really good reverb will blow away a stock reverb, in my opinion.
Yep.
Again, the Studio One reverb. I've used the room reverb from time to time, but out of all the reverbs I have, it's not the one that sounds the best. I got lots of reverbs that are better than that. So I would agree with you, Richard, that if you're getting into third-party plugins and you want to know what should I get first, or I'm on a limited budget, where would I make the most difference? Richard makes a good point. Reverbs and delays, typically, in my opinion, anyway. And Richard's as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mickey says that he admired your musical manifesto.
Oh, Thank you.
Hence his comment.
It's coming out. What's this say? Robert says, I saw on the news that Sony is coming back with vinyl record. Yeah, I saw that too. Vinyl. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Just goes to show that everything is cyclical.
And here again, we're going to be on here forever. I think we have 26 people here. You must not think we're rambling too much. You all would have signed off by now. Here's another good example. You're absolutely right. So in this, there was vinyl until what? The 80s? When CDs came out, early 80s?
Yeah, 80s.
CDs was the greatest thing. It's all digital. It's blah, blah, blah. And everyone threw away their records. I remember going to record stores and they were giving LPs away for $1. You couldn't find, they were throwing them in the dumpster. Vinyl is dead. Until you figured out 10 years down the line that everyone that grew up with vinyl likes the sound of vinyl better than they like the sound of CDs. And why do you think that is? It's very similar to what we're talking about with plugins. A digital format versus an analog format. Now, granted that the stuff on the CD might have been recorded in an analog studio, but there is a very clinical sounding when you listen to a CD and then listen to the vinyl, it's totally different. And some prefer the CD and some prefer the vinyl. And if you're really crazy, some people prefer the MP3, which drives me crazy. You talk about loss of fidelity. So now what is everybody doing? Sony included. Now the rush is on again. Everyone's collecting vinyl. Vinyl is becoming much more expensive to buy today. If an artist releases their CD and releases a vinyl record, the record's 4 times the cost. They're not $1 anymore. People are running out and buying turntables, and everyone's building up their vinyl collection again. So it just, it's the same kind of thing. It's just, some of it is, it all comes around in a circle. And some of it is you just, after you experiment with different formats, you find what you like. And then you gravitate to whatever that is.
The interesting thing with vinyl is that the new way that they manufacture vinyl, the new way that they lathe it, with the new digital lathes, is actually get more data onto the disc than you could in the 70s.
Oh, really? Yeah, I'm not up to speed on that. But yeah, but I just think it's great. And I have vinyl and I love vinyl.
Yep.
I never threw away my records.
If you were to compare it like a record from say the late 70s, so 77, 78, when everybody was using Dolby B and Dolby C in the mastering process and all of that, and then flash forward to now, get the same record. If they reissue it, you might get lucky. They might reissue exactly the same record. If you to compare that record with the one from the 70s, I bet you would hear a lot more clarity at the top end and a lot more depth, a lot more richness, because you can now get more data onto the disc because they're cut with a laser cut rather than with an actual physical cutting device, whatever that is. I don't know exactly what that is.
I don't know what it's called. But then also too, just a lot of people love the sound of the cracks and the pops and the crackles and where back when CDs came out, people hate we hate all that stuff. The CD's so much better because we don't hear all the crackles and the pops and the this and that. And now, now you go back around and people go, I miss the crackles and the pops, Now
we invent plugins that give you the chance to bring that back.
Right.
You can actually get crackle and pop plugin. It's ridiculous.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. So Truckee says bell bottoms are going to be great or going to be huge in 2018. You're probably right. I don't have any of those yet.
What about tank tops and that kind of stuff?
Right. Rock says the late 80s was the last vinyl I bought. I tried to get back into vinyl last year, but I didn't like the crackles in it. Okay, well there you go. That's fine. He didn't like the crackles. You're so used to that pristine thing. Totally cool. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just different. And what is your personal taste? My personal taste when we talk about mixing and stuff is I want to hear the hiss of the tape machine a little bit. I want to hear the artifacts. I want to hear the harmonic distortion. You don't get that in a pure digital world without these kinds of plugins. That's what I like. That's what my clients expect from me. And that's just my taste. Doesn't mean that it's better or it just means that's what I like, Jim says, and the mullet will be coming back as well.
I will never be able to have one of those again.
No, but we all did.
At
one time, right? We all did.
Oh, yeah.
Robert says CD is cleaner sounding. It is.
Yep.
It certainly is. And MJN Studio says, I love my vinyl. So there you go. So in the chat room, we have, three different, a split group, and there's, right? So the most important thing to take away from all of this stuff, we talk about the analog plugins, it's not the plugin, it's really, we also talk a lot about, well, how do you use it? You still got to understand the fundamentals of EQ and compression and how to use them, regardless of which plugin you use. And that's really what we're teaching. We're really not teaching you analog is better. We're teaching you, if you want to use analog, at least recently, we also teach how to use stock plugins, like I said. We're really teaching you how to mix with a different set of tools, different set of examples. So whether you're someone who just has stock plugins because that's all you can afford and you don't feel like you need anything else, very good point. You can learn something from us in our teaching and instruction. If you're someone who wants to get into those kinds of plugins just because you think it's cool, or you want to try something new, or you like the sound of the old records from the 70s and you want to try to emulate that, we're teaching you how to use those as well. But at the core of it all, you have to have basic fundamentals of mixing under your belt, and that's how to use EQ and compression effectively. Those are the two most important things, regardless of the plugin. So as Johnny said earlier, just because we tell you go out and buy, we're not telling you go out and buy anything. If you right? Because if you don't know how to use a compressor in your DAW, your stock compressor, going out and buying a Fairchild compressor does you no good, because that Fairchild compressor will not sound good on your mix. It just won't, unless you get lucky with a preset. But then you really didn't learn anything. Or if you go get one of the one knobs by Waves and you just twist the knob and it sounds better. That's cool. But did you learn anything? It all depends what you're in this for. And everybody's in it for a different reason. And some people don't care about all the technical. It's too much for them. They just want their music to sound good. That's cool. You could get that from us too. And some people want to know all the under the hood because they're techie, nerdy kind of people like we are. And that's cool too. We try to cover all of those areas so everyone can get something out of what we're doing. And I hope, we try to do that as best we can. We try to, cover all aspects of it all. So that's cool. So what else we got going on?
Hilarious comments.
Huh?
There's some hilarious comments. Rainer says, I will never sell my gramophone.
There you go.
I only listen to mini disc.
Well, we still got 26 or so people here. We're a little over 2 hours, so we've been rambling for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I'll stay as long as you guys want to ask questions and you want to talk about. I don't want to just ramble and bore all of yous, but if we would have bored all of yous, there'd be nobody here. So is there any other questions that you guys have? Anything else you want to know? Anything at all? Just ask. As long as it's, home recording and music related.
Oh, Stephen McKeever, he says, second try, plug Johnny's stream. It was great. Thank you. And I did see your first attempt. So we just didn't get to read that out. And I didn't want to read it out because it's my stream and,
Oh, yeah. No, you should go. Yeah, you should check out Johnny's, both of their streams.
Yeah.
Right? Check them all out. We're all here trying to just help and just trying to to kind of further and build our community, the community of home recording, regardless of what software you're using or regardless of what plugins you use, it doesn't matter. You're all welcome.
Yeah. I did my first official live stream earlier in the week, and I think you popped in.
I did. I was there for about half of it. It was great. Yeah. It was great.
So thanks for that, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Let's see. I remember when I didn't. Let's see. Greg says, "Hey, Greg, how are you? I remember when we didn't have air conditioners, but I don't want to go back to that either." Good point, Greg. Robert says, "I started with presets and then I started to tweak what I hear." That's an excellent idea. You can start presets or some plugins make better presets than others. I will say that. I'm not a huge fan of presets. Only from a learning perspective, but if you already know what you're doing and you want to get in the ballpark quickly and then tweak from there, that's a great point, Robert. And I recommend presets then. But when people ask me about settings for specific tracks, I don't ever give them. And I get emailed that a couple of times a week. I have a female vocal. What EQ curve would you use? And I write back and say I have no idea. I'd have to hear the the female vocal.
Yeah, I get a few of those as well.
You can pick a
Yeah.
preset and go from there. The preset's only going to get you in the ballpark, and sometimes, depending on the source material, it won't even get you in the ballpark. But it is a good way to start. You know.
Yeah, Greg, I just wanted to say there, in Scotland we don't have air conditioners.
Well, that's too bad.
It never gets hot enough to need them.
Jim says something really interesting. Andrew Shep still watches tutorials and reviews on plugins. We all learn something from everyone, no matter where we are in our knowledge base. That's a very good point, Jim. I didn't know that. Maybe he's watched one of our tutorials. Wouldn't that be something?
Maybe he's watching right now.
Maybe. Hi, Andrew. How are you? I've watched tons of his stuff.
Yeah, likewise.
I do as well, though. I mean, I don't just watch famous engineers. I watch your stuff, Johnny. I watch Johnny Gibe's stuff. I watch Graham Cochran. I watch Joe Gilder. I watch Pete Woj. I watch, you know, maybe sometimes not to just try to learn something, just to see what you guys are up to. Again, it's just another way. If I watch the way Johnny does something, I go, oh, I may have never done that. And I might try it, and I might like it, and I might not like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that.
So it's, you know, I still watch people all the time. And I still pay, and I even spend money on training courses. Invest in your craft. I say it all the time, whether it's with me or with somebody else. You know, sometimes you got to spend a little money if you really want to learn. And I still do it. Let's see. Steven says, what about Recording Made Easy? A kind of mid-level series on recording techniques. I have one called Recording in PreSonus Studio One Made Easy. I don't know if that's a mid-level. That's kind of a beginner's techniques video. There will be a recording made easy for intermediates in the future. Probably the beginning, maybe second quarter of next year. Yes, it's on the docket. I have enough made easy series titles planned out for the next 5 years. I just move them around, not sure when I'm going to do them all. The problem with Steven with something like that is, and I did this with drums, I did recording acoustic drums made easy. That was the first one where I did a made easy series that wasn't on the computer. It was all away from the computer in the studio. And what I found very quickly was it takes an enormous amount of more time to produce something like that with multiple cameras and to really do it right so you can really learn something and get something out of it. And the cost of producing that is far outweighs what I charge for the series. And that's part of the problem with those kinds of videos. That unless people were willing to invest a little bit more money, it just doesn't make, again, I'm not a hobbyist, I'm a business, it doesn't make good business sense. But there probably will be one in 2018. So stay tuned for that. Let's see, Robert, what's this? Rock says, Dave, you are tracking through the Studio Live, or do you have gone back to the UAD? No, I track when I track through the Studio Live. I don't do a lot of tracking, though. I'm mostly a mixing guy and an educator, obviously a teacher, but mostly mixing and mastering. I don't do a lot. I don't bring bands and artists into my home studio anymore. I haven't done that in probably 3-4 years now. I'm so busy with other things that I just don't have time to be a tracking studio anymore. But what I do when I do track, I use the Studio Live, and it works good. It sounds as good as the UAD preamps. I think I said that before. The Apollo preamps, these preamps sound just as good to me. These are the same preamps that are in the Studio 192. They call them the Max X Max or Max X or something like that. They sound great.
Yeah, X Max, I think it is.
Robert says, what are you going to do? What is it? What are you going to demo next time? Oh, you mean plugins? Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. If you guys have any suggestions of what plugins you'd like us to demo, when I post this video on YouTube in the archive later tonight in the comments section, let us know. And there's probably a pretty good chance we have the plugin. Or if there's a demo of it, I'll go download it and demo it for you guys if you want. So, yeah. I would love to do that.
If we need to. Yeah, we can acquire plugins if we need to demo them. Yeah.
Let's see. Rainer asks how important it can be to start a mix session with fixing phase problems. It's super important. If you're asking, is it important? Is it important? Especially with drums. Yeah. So there's a video on my channel, the plugin called Auto Align.
Auto align. I was about to say you used auto align to do that, didn't you?
Yeah, I use it all the time. It's fantastic plugin. Probably around $150 or so US. But
That
if
was next video you did actually on that. It was you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you really explained it extremely well, and actually going through kind of like the order of business, the order of process,
right.
so that you make sure that you're matching everything, the kit to the overheads and the overheads to the kit. And
Right. Yeah, it's a little tricky plugin if you've never used it, and so the video I think is like 30 or 40 minutes long, but it takes you through how there's a very specific way you want to use that plugin. So it is important, and I do it. And also too, if you have recorded guitars with multiple microphones, like let's say a dynamic and a ribbon, if you didn't, if you aren't the engineer that plays those microphones and got those capsules away from the cone at the same distance, you're going to have some phasing issues. And so it is important to try to fix that if you're going to blend those two things together. Now, you can just use the mix tool and flip the phase, but that's a little different because that's a complete 180. I was going to say 360, but it wouldn't be 360. That's a complete 180-degree flip. But you could be out of phase somewhere between 0 and 180, and that's where auto align will dial in exactly to get them in phase. So. But it is important.
Yeah. The flip polarity on the mix tool can be a little bit brutal.
Yeah.
As you say, because you could have something that's actually only very slightly out of phase, but enough to affect the quality of the audio, rather than being massively out. If it's massively out, then you obviously can just flip it 180.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Jim says, I bought that Studio One video from you and frequently go back to it for a reference. It has saved me much time. Oh, fantastic. Good. That's excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I tell people my videos are not made to be watched in one sitting, and they're not made to only be watched once. They're not. If you've bought, especially the Made Easy stuff, the Quick Mix stuff, they're a lot shorter. They're like an hour and 10 minutes, but the Made Easy stuff starts at 3 hours for, I think, EQ Made Easy. Mixing Made Easy Volume 2 is 13 hours. So you're not going to absorb it all in one sitting. It's supposed to be like a reference, kind of like like an encyclopedia. Go back and you go back and reference it,
Yep.
So that's great, Jim. Thank you so much for the support. Let's see. Robert says, I watch other videos also, but have my favorites. Excellent.
Yeah, me too.
Greg says, do you use the SSL by Waves? Yes, I do. And so does Johnny.
Yep.
It's fantastic. Let's see. Robert says, I don't have the video of David's on the compressor, but I have the others. Yeah, I have a series called Compression Made Easy. It's done in Studio One 2.5, I think. It's not done in Studio One version 3. But yeah, I am going to redo that series again with multi-band compression, sidechain compression, a whole bunch of stuff coming up. Again, it's probably early next year.
Awesome.
Let's see. I'd like to see a non-auto tune. What's this? See? Steven says, I'd like to see a non-auto tune use of Melodyne. What does that mean? I'm not sure.
I think maybe he's getting at using Melodyne not just for tuning purposes, but using Melodyne to align, or using it to
harmonies.
Tempo. Yep, using it for harmonies. Yep.
I'm not a big Melodyne user, so I probably am not the right guy to do that.
I do use it, but I only have Melodyne Essentials, so I'm not going to be able to demonstrate how to do harmonies. But that's not the way I would do harmonies anyway. Even if most of the time when I'm doing vocal harmonies, I'm singing against myself, so I'm kind of used to that now. But
yeah, I'm not a big. I use Melodyne really to just tweak a note, a vocal here and there. I don't track. When I was tracking vocals, if the singer couldn't sing in key, we don't track vocals. We get it. So it's, I don't like, cause Melodyne and auto-tune, you can hear when it's Melodyne and auto-tuned, right? If it's heavy.
If it's heavy, yes, you can.
It's just like, I don't quantize drums. I know a lot of people say, what? You don't quantize? No. If I didn't track the drums and someone sends me now I'm at the point now that I won't even take on a project if it needs major timing issue fixes, I don't want the job. But even when I was a recording engineer, either we played to a click track or the band's got to be in the pocket. We'll fix little things. I'm not saying I won't ever quantize, But I don't cut and paste. I mean, I've seen, people take drum tracks and slice it and dice it, and there's 4,000 cuts, and they're moving everything on the grid. No. I don't do that for two reasons. One, because most of the music that I would record and work on is mostly pop, rock, indie rock. It's more organic. It's supposed to be a little off time, off time.
Yeah.
If a band would come in, well, a band wouldn't come into my studio if I didn't see them play ahead of time. But those are the things I was looking for when I was scouting bands, when I was tracking. I would always go listen to them live, or more importantly, go watch them rehearse. Because live, they've had a few drinks in them. It's late at night. They're sloppy anyway. But in the rehearsal room, when they know I'm coming to see them, can they play? Can the drummer play to a click track? If he or she cannot, can the band play tight enough to where it doesn't sound like it moves too much? If the answer to that question is no, then that was typically a job I didn't take. Because, and the reason for that is not because I didn't want to sit down and do all the work, or I couldn't do the work. It's time. Musicians, especially local musicians that don't have a big budget, don't realize the time it takes to fix all of that stuff. And it becomes a budgetary thing. If a band or a group in my part of the United States, to do a demo wanted to spend, $300 or $400 a day, that's not a lot of money. I can't spend 3 days fixing timing issues or tuning vocals.
Yeah, and where's the fun in that as well?
Right, and then it becomes so processed, because again, I did things mostly with live bands, so we didn't overdub. We did a lot of live tracking in the live room. Band plays all together. I want it to sound like a tight band. If you can't come in and sound tight and play the song in 3 takes, you're not ready to record. And I was pretty strict about that. And I turned away a lot of work in my early days because of that, because I didn't want to put someone's music on my website as part of my portfolio that was a sloppy band. And I didn't want to spend a week fixing drum tracks. That was just me. Lots of studios will do that. They'll take anybody's money. I just wasn't like that. So
No, I quite agree. That said, my MIDI drums made easy deals with quantizing MIDI drums to the point where they don't sound overly robotic and mechanical, which is what quantizing can do. Even if you're quantizing audio, it can sound robotic, artificial, and you can get artifacting from various stretching processes that are done to the audio. So really, if what you're sent as a mix engineer has a lot of that kind of stuff going on, where you're gonna have to audio bend something, or you're gonna have to quantize these drums, or you're gonna have to bring this rhythm guitar part into line. You're gonna have to make it clear to your client that they're gonna have to live with the consequences of the artifacting, because you will get artifacting.
Right. You can get away with some stuff, and fixing a thing here and there is totally part of the game, but it's where do you draw the line, and where does it sound robotic, or it sound the artifacts? Or again, from a business point of view, how much, if you guys have an unlimited budget, and if the budget only says I'm going to mix a song a day, but it takes me 3 days to mix the song because I got to fix half of the song, well then, if you're willing to spend the money, I'm willing to do it. But at the end of the day, I always, again, try to always fall back on, let's rehearse before we come into the studio. Let's get the songs down as good as we can. And because, you know how it is. I mean, even famous, if you've watched any kind of rock documentaries and stuff, or you listen to some famous, where do they say the best performances are in the first 2 or 3 takes? I mean, they come in, it's spontaneous, they're warmed up, they're rehearsed, they know the songs, boom, 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 and there's the record. And then they go back and overdub a thing here, punch a thing here, fix a note here, tune a vocal slightly here. But making records where you can just slice and dice audio files, for days trying to move everything, that's not how I like to make records. And that's not the way it was done in the analog studio, by the way, folks.
Exactly right. I mean, that's not how it was done on 4-track tape machines either.
No. I mean, yeah, they were some splicing of tape and stuff, but that was minimal. I mean, they didn't sit there and take a vocal track and slice the tape up into 14 different sections. No. There was no auto-tune. Singers got to be able to sing.
I still have slicing wounds, by the way. I still have the scars. That was rough.
Let's see. Robert says you need to get that video, MIDI drums made easy. Yes, you all do need to get that. If you're into programming drums, you need to have that in your collection for a variety of reasons.
And for those of you that do have it, Volume 2 is going to be ready very soon.
Excellent.
Like
yeah, that's excellent.
Next couple of weeks, it's going to be ready.
Yeah, so MIDI drums made easy. Volume 2 is coming, and then there'll be a Volume 3 somewhere along the way down the road, I think, right?
Yeah, just probably round about the Christmas time, just before.
Perfect. Maybe. That's perfect. Excellent. Yeah, we're all looking forward to that. So we still got 26 people here. We're at almost 2 hours and 20 minutes. And this is great. Thanks so much, guys. I mean, I can't stay on much longer because I do have other business I have to attend to. This was supposed to be an hour and a half program. But no, I'm great. This is great, right? People are hanging out this long. The more of these live streams we do, the more popular they seem to be. And we have people hanging on a lot longer, which is great. Again, any suggestions that you guys have for any kind of future broadcasts or topics or plugin reviews or whatever, because if you don't tell us really what you feel you want or need, we're just kind of coming up with stuff that we think that you want and need. Put them in the comments. I read all the comments. I answer every single comment that gets left on my YouTube page within a couple of days, typically. And so if you have ideas of what you guys want to see, if we start getting a pattern of ideas, we will absolutely bring that to you. No question about it. And if that means we have to, like you said, demo a plugin or even purchase a plugin or check something out or whatever, we'll try to help for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. You guys need to get that. Oh, yeah. Okay. Robert says that. Loop Axe Records. I have almost all the Made Easy products. They are great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that they're helping you. There'll be more to come. Trust me. Let's see. Robert says, been waiting for it. Okay.
Thanks, Bobby.
Loop Hacks Records says topic: cheap, good plug-in brands. Cheap or inexpensive, affordable. Right now, Waves. We talked about that earlier. I can't believe they're still on sale. Between $29 and $49, you can have some of their best plugins. All the ones we've been talking about throughout this broadcast. Plugin Mix, again, cheap, inexpensive plugins. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good, but I think you get like 100 plugins for $100. And I showed you 4 of them tonight that I used that are really good. So that's like $1 a piece, you know. And there are some free plugins out there. We said we were going to, at one point, do a That Plugin show where we just use some free plugins.
Yes. Yeah. That's definitely a good one for us to do, because there are some terrific, really, really good free ones out there.
Yeah.
And you're just like, is this really free? That's insane.
Yeah. Let's see. Richard asks, a template show might be an idea. Oh yeah. You mean like mix like Studio One templates? Sure. I have a couple on my YouTube channel, but we could do a show where we just show you how we set up our template and why we set it up the way we do. That would be really, really good. Especially if you're trying to do analog mixing, the template is real important. Jim says for 50 for $100. Oh, that must be the plugin mix. 50 plugins for $100. Okay, so they're $2 a piece. That's pretty affordable, right?
That's just ridiculous.
Let's see. Waves make sure that you're not on the Maverick or lower. Installer does not work. Oh, okay, yes. On a Mac, if you're going to use Waves, you have to be on the operating system of at least Mavericks, which is about 4 versions old. So if you have a new Mac, you have a newer version of it. If you have an older Mac, 3 or 4 years ago maybe, you can update your OS for free. If you're a Mac user, all the OSs are all free updates, by the way. They don't charge you a penny for them. But be careful, because when you get to certain versions, some of the hardware is not compatible anymore. So you just got to, before you update any of your computers, whether you're on a Mac or a PC, be sure you've backed everything up, right? Sometimes things don't always play nice together, and, you know, not knowing your exact setup, I would just caution you before you update your OS. If you're a Studio One user or a Pro Tools user or a Cubase user, go to their website, make sure that they're compatible with the OS you're upgrading to. Look at the release notes. Ask guys like us, you know, have you seen any problems? And just do that with caution, and back everything up. Back it all up, because you could have a problem where you update the OS and then certain things don't work. That has happened. on both Mac and PC. It just does. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're in almost 2.5 hours. I hate to call it a night, but I have to call it a night because I have to get back to work. But again,
Yeah,
I want to thank everyone for joining us for that plug-in show again. We'll be back next month. If you check the Facebook page, you will see a post. It's usually the second week of the month, so second week of August. It'll be a Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Johnny Guy will be back with us that month, and we will do 3 plug-ins as opposed to 2. And again, next Saturday night, which is what? Today's the 8th, the 15th, right, of July. Next Saturday,
Yep.
5 p.m., interactive mixing with Johnny and myself again. We'll be back with another song, and we'll do some interactive mixing together. And then the third week of the month, we'll do our normal live stream, which will be 8 p.m. on Saturday. But if you go to Home Recording Made Easy, the Facebook page, all that information is there so you can see it all. Is that it? Any closing words, Johnny, for the good folks?
You know what? This has been a fantastic show.
It has been, yeah.
I think, yeah, we're shorthanded not having Johnny here, but you know what? The chat has been really good. The questions have been really good. And, 26 people still in the room. I mean, we've been on for 2.5 hours and nobody's bored. I'm really impressed by that, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. And I guess, from me, it's going to be a goodbye from Scotland.
And goodbye from the United States, and we will see you guys next Saturday night. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Cheers.